I'll give it a couple more minutes in case other colleagues join us, and then we will begin. Misty, we have a quorum, so we can probably hit record and I will start. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome on this very hot evening. Board of Alders notice, New Haven. The City Services and Environmental Policy Committee of the Board of Alders will meet on Thursday, July 1st, 2021 at 6 p.m. via video conference at https://bit.ly/3zthlos and by phone at 646-558-8656. Webinar ID 950-9960-1733 to hear and act on the following items. For required password, please contact publictestimony@newhavenct.gov. First item, LM 2021-0262. Order of the New Haven Board of Alders extending residential parking zone 2 to include the non-permitted unrestricted parking section on the north side of Huntington Street, running down from but not including 23 Huntington Street to Whitney Avenue. Item 2, LM 2021-0249. Order of a New Haven Board of Alders approving a 5-year lease agreement by and between the City of New Haven and CPEN, Community Placemaking Engagement Network Incorporated, for programming at 224 Shelton Avenue, 227 to 231 Shelton Avenue, and 131 through 133 Hazel Street at a rent of $1 per year. Item 3, LM 2021-0277. Workshop and public hearing at which the registrars of voters and city town clerk would be present to discuss matters pertaining to voting procedure and election administration. Per order, Honorable Anna M. Festa, Chair. Attest, Honorable Michael Smart, City Clerk. These items are on file and available in the office of the City Clerk, Room 202 at 200 Orange Street, New Haven, Connecticut 06510. For accessibility related accommodations, please call 203-946-7651V or 203-946-8582 TTY TDD. Public comment testimony may also be submitted via email to publictestimony@newhavenct.gov before 2 p.m. on the day of the meeting. If you wish to present testimony at the meeting, you must register in advance at https://bit.ly/3zthlos or by calling 203-946-7934 or emailing publictestimony@newhavenct.gov before 2 p.m. on the day of the meeting for the required password. Public can view the meeting at https://bit.ly/3zthlos or listen by phone at 646-558-8656. Webinar ID 950-9960-1733. The password to listen by phone only is 612-05988. At this time, I would like my colleagues to introduce themselves. I am Anna Festa, Ward 10, Chair of CSEP. The vice chair will be joining us shortly. He is currently in another meeting. So Alder Antunes.
Gerald Antunes, Ward 12.
Alder Roth.
Abby Roth, Ward 7.
Alder Winter.
Stephen Winter, Ward 21.
Alder Singh.
Campton Singh, Ward 5.
And Alder Smith.
Anta Smith, Ward 30.
I also would like to note for the record that Alder Edwards has joined us from Ward 19. At this time, we will begin listening to item 1, which is in regard to the residential parking on Huntington Street. Do we have the maker of the communication? I see Martha Smith on. Alder Edwards, did you want to make an introduction, or should we just have Ms. Smith?
I can make an introduction, Madam Chair, if you would like me to.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you for having me this evening. Thanks to all of you for your hard work and dedication. I'm going to throw that in there. Tonight, we're going to have Ms. Martha Smith present. It is a small section of Huntington Street. It is like 100 to 200 feet, I believe. It's less than like a half a block. It's a small section of Huntington Street that we continuously have issues with. I am in agreement, and I hope you guys can approve this request to get the permit parking extended in that small section. I have received complaints over time. We have people that park there that don't live in the area. They get on the bus, they leave their cars, and it takes up spaces for people that are either running across the street to one of the schools, or for residents if they have company even. It's just an issue, and it's right off of Whitney Avenue. And we get a lot of people that jump on, like I said, the Yell shuttle even, and they just use it for all day, all night, whatever we want parking. So I'll let Ms. Smith present properly, but I am hoping that we can get this approved. Thank you.
Oops, you're muted.
You're muted, Madam Chair.
I just found it. My clicking wasn't fast enough, but thank you. Ms. Smith, if you could just state your name and address for the record and then present your testimony.
Okay. My name is Martha Smith. I'm actually representing the First Presbyterian Church of New Haven that's located at 704 Whitney Avenue in New Haven. I'm the church administrator. And we're the ones that actually are making the request. This is a stretch of street that lies directly adjacent to the church. And we basically have not been able to access it because it's constantly in use. So we're just asking that that it be made the same as the rest of the street. So it's equal access for everyone. I'm not sure if there's anything more I should say. Can't think of anything right now.
Okay. I am very, very familiar with this street. I grew up right there, and we were the makers of the initial petition for the 2-hour / residential parking that exists now. This is just so my colleagues have some history here. When the Yell Shuttle began, I guess their organization or whatever you want to call it, when they first started, what folks were doing is coming in from wherever and parking on the residential streets and taking the Yell Shuttle to get to work. So it became incredibly congested. And there are some streets existing today that don't have residential section, but if it's close to a Yell Shuttle stop, you'll see cars. You know where the Yell Shuttle stop is because of the magnitude of cars that are parked. So the residents on Huntington Street were incredibly frustrated and aggravated that there was no parking for they to park in the street, particularly for those that either did not have parking or for whatever reason, or had guests. So this is about 100 feet of parking. There's also a fire hydrant that is constantly being blocked. It is off of Whitney Avenue. And I can understand the frustrations of First Presbyterian Church because folks still do come in and park on that stretch of Huntington Street. So with that, I do want to make it clear that we do have a report from City Plan, and the report does indicate that there are not enough signatures on the petition, but I do want to make it also clear that a petition was done years ago for the current residential parking that exists. And this is just a very small portion that was left out. So with that being said, I will be asking for those signatures. We're hearing this testimony tonight. We will be voting on this item pending those signatures for approval. And I'm assuming you will have them for us by the second reading when the full board meets and votes. I believe that is August, correct? August 2nd is the second reading. So we'll need them before that date.
Yeah, we were unaware of that there was a specific limit on the, or a number that we should achieve. So we can go back and do that because we were also doing it during the pandemic and we weren't pursuing people as much as we might have.
Okay, I just want to make it clear that we will need those signatures prior to the August 2nd full Board of Alders meeting.
Yep, I understand.
Perfect. I also see Carla Lindquist with she is the Acting Director for Transportation, Traffic and Parking. Would you like to add anything? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Carla Lindquist. I'm representing the City of New Haven Transportation, Traffic and Parking Department, and our address is 200 Orange Street, New Haven, Connecticut. Actually, on that point about signatures, our office is under the impression that this stretch is already included in the zone, and so it may not be necessary to take further legislative action on it. You may just be able to turn it on, so to speak, through the traffic authority. So if obviously, Madam Chair, you're welcome to, continue to gather the signatures and submit it to the full board. But it sounds like it's also possible to just send it to the traffic authority. As to your point, when this zone was established, it did include this section. It was just apparently the decision was made to stop the activated zone, if you will, the enforced part of the zone, before the church's stretch. But you can turn that on, so to speak, just through an action at the traffic authority.
Okay, so just for clarification purposes, from what I understood, we do not necessarily need these signatures and just submit it to the traffic authority.
Mhm.
And we'll still be able to get signs on that side of the street indicating that it is 2-hour / residential parking.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
And then it will be turned on for enforcement, and that will be that's the rest of the process.
Well, Ms. Smith, you got clearance. You don't have to
That's
get
good. Well, we will contact the rest of the neighbors and try to get those signatures, but it's good to know that, if people are on vacation for the month of July, we're not under such pressure.
Perfect. Okay. I will open up to my colleagues for any additional questions, and I'll start with Alder Antunes. Do you have any questions?
Yes. It's a little bit confusing. Is it residential parking or is it 2-hour parking during certain times of the day? Mainly for Carla, I guess.
Sure. So the way that this type of restricted zoning works is that if you have a residential permit, you can park there just like you would be able to park in any other part of the zone. If you don't have a residential permit, you are limited to 2-hour parking. Usually that's between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m., I believe. In any case, obviously, we don't have enforcement overnight, right? But we do have evening enforcement. But yeah, so a member of the public can park there for 2 hours.
Okay, so it's basically grandfathered in because it was included in the previous approval, right?
Yeah, so the way that the zoning, the residential zoning works is that we have the big zones, right? So the orange zones, if you will, on the map. And so what those are the established boundaries of where a zone exists and where people can get a permit. So if you live in the orange part of the map, you can get a permit, and any of the streets that are in there can be turned on essentially for enforcement should the folks want to. And they would do that through the second step, which is the traffic authority. If you want to create a new zone where there isn't an existing one that hasn't already been passed through your body of the Board of Alders, that's when it definitely needs to come through this process first, because no such zone would have existed previously. But in this case, Huntington exists as part of the zone already. And so to enact the enforced part of the zone, just have to submit to the traffic authority.
So up to this point, it was just selective enforcement then? You weren't enforcing that part because nobody complained?
No, well, previously there's no restriction on this part, so there's nothing to enforce. It's just public parking.
Okay, I yield. Doesn't make sense, but I yield.
You know what, let me add a little bit more. When this was initially submitted, the First Presbyterian Church didn't feel that that area needed to be enforced. So it was never signed, so there were no signs put up, and it was still a free for all just in that one section. But things have changed now in that area with additional apartments being built across the street, the school being there. And more apartments, more residential apartments with more cars, et cetera, that are in that area. So for that reason, that segment was just not, it was still in the zone, but it didn't need to be enforced because there were no signs that indicated it was residential or 2-hour parking. I don't know if that.
Yeah, I understand, and I agree with it. I just don't like the idea of selective enforcement on particular areas that were included in it. That's all.
Sorry, I think just to clarify, it's not selective enforcement. If it's not part of the enforced part of the zone, there's 2 layers to the zone. So one part of the zone is whoever's eligible to get a residential pass, and that's the larger part of the zone, and that's what this is already part of. And then there's enforced parts, which are turned on essentially, and residents have decided that those parts they want restricted only to people who have permits. This section is currently not turned on, but it's part of the larger zone. So if, for instance, the Presbyterian Church had housing, which it doesn't, but if it did, people who lived there would be eligible for a permit, and they could park further down the street where there's currently restricted zoning, but the front is open to the public, this section currently.
Alder Antunes, are you all set?
Yes, I yield. I'm good.
Okay. Alder Roth, any questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to everyone who presented. And Carla, happy first day in your acting role. I have a couple questions. I guess I'm sorry if I want to make sure I understand if we as a committee and then the board should be, if we voted yes, would that activate the enforcement part, or is really at this point the correct body to do the traffic authority? And then my second part of my question is, the traffic authority sometimes doesn't meet for like 3 months in a row. And so if we as a group have that same power to do it, would that be more efficient? Because if they're not going to meet again till like September, we could take action more quickly. So Carla, if you could give if that made sense, and let me know if you need me to clarify.
It made sense. I would say that I'm not 100% sure, but it's my understanding that regardless of whether you decide to take the item to its full extent within your body, it would still have to go to the traffic authority in any case. So.
Thanks. That's really helpful. And it sounds like if we acted tonight, it actually is meaningless because it's already what we have the power to do is kind of create that permit zone, and that's already actually been done. So perhaps we shouldn't take action tonight, would be your recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, so I think again, what I've been told and my understanding is that the rest of the process, as the chair has said, happened initially. I'm really sorry for the background noise. I'm solo parenting tonight. Happened initially that the rest of the process would just happen at the traffic authority. But I do think it is still helpful to bring the rest of the signatures to the traffic authority. But it may not be necessary to bring them to the full board.
Great, thank you for that. And then I guess I just had one final question for Martha Smith. I'm guessing some of the church members may perhaps live within the parking zone and so have residential parking permits. But for other ones, the 2 hours is enough time for them to have parking. I just think of temple services and stuff. They go really long sometimes. 2 hours wouldn't be enough.
So the main time we need parking is actually on Sundays, obviously, and we have a lot of evening activities, but we do have daytime events, which, meetings. I mean, some of them might go longer, but we would just have to, take our chances. Or, I mean, we have some limited parking in the lot, and then we also park on the lawn if, we need overflow and it's not like a foot deep in snow. So, I mean, we've been dealing with it for a long time, but it's just, as I said, it's just been annoying that we couldn't access parking that was directly next to the church because it was always being used by other people.
Sure. No.
But we're just saying we want to equalize it, so everyone has a chance to use it. So it'll still probably be heavily used, but it won't be constantly heavily used.
Yeah. No, I very much appreciate the problem of people parking and taking the Yale shuttle. So I know it's a very real problem, and it sounds like 2 hour parking would benefit in many cases. So those were my questions. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alder Roth. And for the record, I'd like to note that Alder Clyburn and Alder Rodriguez has joined us. Alder Winter, any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for Acting Director Lundquist, just to clarify the explanation. So they're able to extend the zone without an action of the board because of the previous petition that was submitted, which covered the whole block. Is that correct?
Yeah, so again, the zoning is twofold. The board's role is to establish a zone and the boundaries of that zone. So once that happens, what that means is anybody who lives in that area can receive a residential permit to park in enforced areas in that zone. However, the enforced areas have to be turned on block by block or street by street. And that happens at the traffic authority. And so what has already happened here is that the zone was already established with the boundaries extending all the way to Whitney. And so to turn on the enforcement of the zone in that small last section that doesn't have enforced parking, it would be the action of the traffic authority because the board has already established it as part of the zone. And so if the residents so choose, they can then just turn it on through the traffic authority.
And it was established as part of the zone because the initial petition covered the whole section, the whole block length?
So if you take a look at our residential zoning map, the way that zones used to be established is they were very large. They encompassed a lot of streets. And since this, I understand, was one of the earlier ones, it has a lot of blocks included. And so that doesn't mean that all of those blocks are enforced, however. So the residential the residents speak on the petition when they want to turn their block on for enforcement and restrict it only to residents who have permits.
Okay. But in the past, that petition has also come through us.
Yes, and so recently, the residential zone changes that you've seen through this body have been brand new zones. So for
Okay,
instance, I'm thinking of in the East Shore area. There was no zone established there. And so both the zone itself had to be created and then the enforced area had to be turned on, so to speak.
I see. Okay, thank you.
In these recent cases, the zones that have been created have been smaller and not as wide ranging, and they've been pretty much relegated to the area that the residents have expressed interest in turning on initially.
Got it. Okay, no, that's really helpful. Thank you, Acting Director Lundquist. Thank you, Madam Chair.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Winter. Alder Singh, any questions?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to Acting Director Lindquist. So just for clarification, let's say a resident has a permit, they could park there for a month of time, but a non-resident could park only for 2 hours in a zone.
Yes, so in the areas that are signed for that, that's exactly how it works. There are some residential zones that don't have any exemptions, and in those residential zones, no one without a permit can park there for any amount of time. But in this case, the one that's being proposed would have a 2-hour limit for public parkers who do not currently hold a permit to that zone.
So, yeah, so that's was my follow-up question, Madam Chair. So when it said zone number so and so, and it says 2-hour limit for non-residents, it would say, the sign would say that?
Yes. Sorry,
Thank
yes.
you, Madam Chair. That answered my question. Thank you. I just don't want anyone to pull up there, park for 2 hours and then come back and get a ticket. So that's just for the clarity. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alder Singh. Alder Smith, any questions?
Just one question. There is a church on the corner, correct? Will this affect the church parking? Because I thought I heard you saying that it's gonna put you guys onto the grass. No?
You want me
So,
to answer that?
yeah, go ahead, Ms. Smith.
So it will help the church. I mean, what we're saying is that we basically have not had access to this during the week because it's always been full. On Sundays, it has not been a problem because most EL people don't work and it's just not being used. You know, the school isn't in session. So, you know, that hasn't been a major problem, but during the week it has been. So we're hoping that this will free up at least some of the parking. We understand that it's open to anyone for 2 hours. So, you know, we just would like a little share of it adjacent to the church. Before now, we have parked in our little lot and we've parked on the lawn and we've parked further up Huntington Street in the 2-hour zone. So it's just going to make the access a little bit better. I know during the week there are groups, you know, we have some, you know, family type events and there's cars with mothers with small children. And I know they would appreciate not having to walk so far if the lot is full.
Okay, so I just want to be clear. We're looking for residential parking. How would the church fit in with this residential parking? Wouldn't the church have to have special parking passes because everyone that goes to the church is not a resident of that community? So will it call for a special parking permit for the church members?
I don't know. I mean,
So oops, sorry.
I'm not sure. I don't think we were applying for residential parking permits for the church.
It's also 2 hour to anyone. So non-residents can park at a maximum of 2 hours. So it's twofold. It's residential parking for residents of that zone whenever they want, but it's only 2 hour parking for non-residents that are visiting or going to services or meetings, etc. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I understood that very clearly, but I mean, you know, the church is missing out on parking stalls. And I mean, at least it would free them up to have extra parking space so that they can be able to utilize it just not the 2 hours, because sometimes church do extend a little bit more than 2 hours. And we don't want them, because they've been great neighbors, been into the community for such a long time, to be penalized if they're there for 30 or 45 minutes to get a ticket.
I can add to some of this. I grew up right there, and I should probably tread lightly, but for the most part, the residents are very understanding. So they are not going to call traffic authority on a Sunday or even a Saturday to enforce it if they see someone that is there for 3 hours. And again, just being someone who grew up literally right there at the corner, that experienced a lot of the parking concerns that are being voiced this evening, I don't think the neighbors will give the church a hard time. At least I'm confident that they won't. I see Alder Edwards' hand is up. Did you want to add to any of this?
Yes, Madam Chair. I'm really going to piggyback off what you said, just to speak on what Alder Smith is saying. Typically, because there's not a lot of enforcement, one, they will not call and complain if they know there's an event with the church. The neighbors are pretty good with that. Also, because the school is directly across the street, and there are often times where there's a school play and it's used as a little overflow, that section. And so far, it's been working out with the 2 hours in the many years that I've been going to the school right there for events and for church events as well. So I think the 2 hours should be sufficient. Thank you.
And I guess, Alder Smith, to your point, though, we should probably just get information from the acting director, Lindquist, to maybe clarify that if we did want to extend the hours on that stretch, is that possible, since the other zone area is already established for 2 hours?
I agree, totally. Thank you. No more questions, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I'll have to double check whether that can be done just through the traffic authority submission, whether the zone can be different times for the public parking. But hypothetically, we do have other time limits that are certainly more than 2 hours, so that they certainly exist, but I'll find out about what the exact mechanism is in this case, given that the rest of the enforced part of the zone is 2 hours, but I anticipate that that will be fine.
Okay, thank you. And just lastly, and I'll ask colleagues again if they have any questions to just raise your hand. I want to just clarify, because I heard two things as we were having this conversation about the signature. So it does sound like the traffic authority does need the signatures.
Right, to turn on the enforced zone, yeah.
Okay, so Ms. Smith, I misspoke earlier. Let's get the signatures that we need. Let's try and get that in before our meeting on August 2nd. And that way we have crossed our T's, dotted our I's, and have everything we need without question. Alder Roth, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I am still not clear if we need to be, if the signatures are for us or the signatures are just for when they go to the traffic authority. And so if we should even be voting on it, we're voting on something that already exists, it sounds like, and maybe we just don't need to act on this at all and it just needs to go to the traffic authority. But I guess that's for Acting Director Lindquist.
Well, like I said, it's my understanding, and I was told by our traffic engineer that this part of the zone was already established, and so therefore the aldermanic step of the residential parking process had been completed for this area. So again, I can't advise the board on whether they can or should pass it through again, but I'm just under the I'm under the impression that it can be done directly through the traffic authority at this juncture, if that's something that the board would like to do.
Thank you.
I think because it's on our agenda and I want to be absolutely certain we don't miss any steps, we will move this process forward with our normal method of voting on it and allowing Ms. Smith to gather her signatures and bring it to a first and second reading, just to play it safe, even though it sounds like we don't need to, but I personally feel better doing it. And I'm going to, suggest that we do call on a vote and follow our part just in case. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, so are there any other questions, suggestions, concerns regarding this item? Okay, thank you, Ms. Smith, for testifying this evening, and Acting Director, welcome, good luck, and thanks for joining us this evening. We will move on to the second item. If we can let our guests in. It is in regard to the 5-year lease agreement for CPEN. So while we wait for everyone to be entered into the room, I just want to say that anyone who is presenting, please state your name and address for the record, please. So I see Mr. Good, Miss Abubakar, and I apologize if I missaid that. I also see Frank Diamore with LCI and Alder Clyburn, who I believe will also probably be saying something. So if the maker of the item could begin their testimony, beginning with your name and address. And I'm going to say that is you, Doreen. And you are muted.
Okay. Doreen Abubakar from 101 Sherman Avenue, New Haven.
Go ahead, you can present your item.
Okay. So we are requesting permission to have a 5-year lease. I started in Newhallville about 7 years ago, working in the mud hole, creating what's now called the Learning Corridor. The first 5 years, we were not a nonprofit, and pretty much for me, the vision kept growing, and we kept finding ways to sustain the work that we were doing. And then, like 2 years ago, said we need to establish ourselves as a nonprofit. So we're asking for a 5-year lease, really because we're at a point where we have really created the infrastructure for the work that we do, as well as secured the sustainable funding and resources, connections, and networks to help us accomplish the things that we've been doing really on a weekly basis. We are out there every Tuesday, Thursday from 9 in the morning till 12. We come back on Thursdays from 5 to 7:30. And then we're out there on Saturdays from 9 to 1. And in those times, we have been the maintenance people of the property. We have been the beautification people of the properties. We have been the visionary of creating activities to engage the neighborhood. We have bikes. We've invested just really so much in the area that we're asking for the 5 years, because I feel like now that we have the infrastructure, I can now really start with uplifting the people of Newhallville. When I first went there, no one could imagine the mud hole becoming the learning corridor. That vision was given to me. and I've never lived in New Hallville. And with that being said, the people have been able to witness change and things happening simply because of a vision and working at making it become a reality. And so, at this time, the goal is to have the time so that we could solicit more funding, as a nonprofit, to get into more programming, trainings, and opportunities. I'm so amazed at how limited New Hallville residents are in getting access to information and resources simply because there's no communication. There's no way to get information to people but to knock on their door or put it in their mailbox. And so CPEN has become sort of that middle person that when we hosted the Rock to Rock launch party, we hosted URI's 25th birthday. I mean, to be able to host events in a place that used to be called the Mud Hole, is just like a huge achievement. Now, the nonprofit just has me. I am the only transplant. All of the people that we work with, and there's about 8 people now that we stipend, are New Hallville residents. And so, the time is to secure our commitment to the time. I've put over 5 years into New Hallville, and I would like the city to grant 5 more years. And I'm hoping in 5 years that our Learning Corridor Residential Council is running things at the Learning Corridor, that other city nonprofits, I can bridge partnerships into actually coming into New Hallville. That's
you.
about the Learning Corridor. I don't know if you want to know about all the pieces. You want to know about all the pieces?
It might be helpful, so it allows all of us to know. I thank you for all that you do. I think this is amazing, and you're amazing. And give us as much information as to what the Learning Corridor encompasses, et cetera.
Okay. So, like I started with, it was a vision. And then thankful for Alder Clyburn at the time, who really, partnered with me to make the dream into more of a reality. We had a charrette where we asked the neighbors to come out and sort of talk about what they envision, what they can envision for the space. And it was a little limited. And I think it had a lot to do with 30 years of nothing happening in that space. To think of what it is today, it might have taken an outsider who had been exposed to other spaces. And I'm also the founder of the West River Water Festival, which during the COVID year would have been the 10th year. So I am the type of person that sort of sets sight on doing and completing and developing things and doing all that's needed to get it there. The spot across the street has our container. So before the city started their bike program, we actually had 25 bikes in the storage shed, and we were offering bike rides to the residents. Little bit of my background is really in parent engagement, and also I'm a business consultant, entrepreneurship stuff. I presently work for Community Economic Development Fund. And so being in this space, you just needed a person with all these attributes to develop not only infrastructure, but now we're working on building, doing some kind of economic development work. And it's through our pollinator plants that we have now established in the lot. And that lot is the 3 parcels together, I think, on Hazel Street. That lot, we have, we're waiting now to hear more about a greenhouse. We were able to sell plants last year that helped us buy a greenhouse. There is a greenhouse in New Hallville, but nobody has access to it. So what we do, I do have things sort of locked down, but it is available for any resident to use. Some people have asked, who are you doing this for? I don't live there. I'm there 13 hours a week. I'm doing it for the neighborhood. And sometimes when I'm going across town, I might ride by there. And when I ride by there and see people sitting down, taking in the breeze and the sunshine and the trees and the pollinator, garden that we put there, seeing butterflies in this space. So I'm an advocate for magnifying nature in our more urban communities. And I think a lot of times, we forget the healing that nature brings to people. And that's what I'm trying to do in this, neighborhood that has 6,500 people in a 1 mile radius, a neighborhood that doesn't have any nonprofits. I'm an outdoor nonprofit. But I have some other visions in the future, if so permitted. I see much more that we can do in this space to continue to build up the neighborhood for the residents, and also to show New Haven that people can come together if we invite them, and that people can transform their community if we help them.
Thank you. That was helpful and very encouraging as well. I see other panelists. Alder Clyburn, would you like to add anything?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I want to say, I'm just listening to Doreen, and I want to say to her, oh my goodness, thank you. My mind went back when we had, no place to gather, and how we started just her and I, just raising money to have our fall festival there and spring festival, and how we bought in a petting zoo for the kids, a pony for the kids, and the space started to come alive, and the people wanted more. So as she's the visionary, she began to bring more for us. And I'll never forget Mr. Doreen, help me. I know his name is Dave. He was the architect.
Moser.
Yeah, Mr.
Dave
Moser. Yeah, who really helped us with the space to show us what could be put there and how it could be put there. But I'm just grateful that our area, Newhallville, have a gathering spot now where kids can ride their bikes on Saturday. Doreen, you mentioned the bikes, but you didn't say how the kids come on Saturday and ride bikes. We have everything there for them, and how the water was even put there. We needed water to water our plants, and how CPEN have invested in making sure we have water there. And then we used to have our Christmas program there outside. Yeah, sing along, where we had a Christmas tree. We put up a Christmas tree out there. It was, let's see, it's so many things. And then we would get the blood pressures and done for the people with they had the Saturdays that they would walk with the doctors there. Remember, we used to do that too on a Saturday. It became a spot where you can be nourished and loved on. And it's just so many things we did there. I can't even remember all, but I'm just grateful that when I became older, Doreen was there on my heels saying, let's do something for this area where people can really enjoy. And most of the thing I love with our young people, oh yeah, we had we worked with the Red Cross. Remember, Doreen, we
Mhm.
did that, and our young people became a part of the Red Cross, and they helped put smoke detectives in the houses for the people here in our neighborhood. And I never forget one of our constituent who had passed on, Miss Witherfield. Miss Whitfield, she died, and she started with you over there, Doreen, cleaning
Mhm.
up and planting. But we just made this a place where we all could come and enjoy one another in a safe area where our children could be safe as well. So that's all I can remember. We have done so many things, Doreen. It's been like 8 years we've been out there. So I'm just grateful that we'll get 5 more years to really continue to bring what the people need because they have asked for the things that's out there that we bring there. They have asked, and it was a pleasure to bring it to pass. So I want to just say thank you for listening to us tonight. And it's a place where everybody in the neighborhood could enjoy and do things there as well. It's for everyone. And so far, everyone has enjoyed. And so I want to say thank you, Madam Chair, for this time.
Thank you, Alder Clyburn, for your input. It's greatly appreciated. Before we continue, I'd just like to note that Alder Crespo has joined us. Welcome, Alder Crespo. I do see Frank Diamore. I think it'd be good to hear from LCI. So Frank, if you have any information on your part to add to this conversation, you can unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record. Mr. Diamore, are you there? While we wait for, looks like you're okay, there you go, you're connecting.
Chair, while we're waiting on Mr. Diamore, I forgot to tell you about the bikes, the bikers who go on the path. They could stop and get their bikes, put air in their tire. They can get water. People who walk in their dogs, we have where they can get water for the dogs. We thought about something for everybody.
Thank you for that addition, Alder Clyburn. Mr. Diamore is having some technical issues, but Mr. Good is here. If you'd like to add anything to the conversation, please state your name and address for the record.
Sure. Aaron Good, 45 William Street, New Haven. I don't have a lot to add to what Doreen and Alder Clyburn said very eloquently, but I've worked very closely with CPEN since its founding. Worked with Doreen and Alder Clyburn actually before CPEN existed. But I was the first president of CPEN when it became a 501c3, and it has been very nourishing. I think that was Alder Clyburn's word, and I think that's right. It's been very nourishing to see what a significant positive impact CPEN has had in New Hallville, providing health and wellness programs to local residents, beautifying the public space at the Learning Corridor, and especially with engaging the local youth through bicycling, environmental and entrepreneurship programs. And the success of those programs, I think, is getting more and more recognition. There was just a wonderful piece in the New Haven Independent that I hope some of you saw, and CPEN is expanding its range of activities, and that's where this lease comes in. And I want to apologize for providing misleading information to some members of the committee, because I thought this lease agreement only applied to 227 Shelton and 131 Hazel. where CPEN has recently created this native plant nursery. And I didn't realize that it also applied to 224 or 228 Shelton. So that's my bad. That was a misunderstanding. It wasn't actually look at the lease agreement. So my apologies for that. I do understand there's some concern from some individual or individuals about not being able to use the triangular park, 224 Shelton, that we sometimes call the learning corridor. That's just one of the lots in question here. I really don't foresee that being an issue. Lots of different groups currently use the learning corridor, and that is not going to change. You know, last year we had over 170,000 trips being taken through the learning corridor just on the Farmington Canal Trail. So this is inherently a very accessible space, and that is not going to change. Only CPEN uses the other lots in question. So I don't actually think that anything in this lease will change the day-to-day look or feel of this area at all. It just clarifies and formalizes the relationship between CPEN and the city and gives some certainty to CPEN in terms of its access to these spaces for its programming without excluding any other individuals or groups. So I hope that just maybe speaks to some of the concerns or questions that the committee has been looking at in its deliberations. So thank you.
Thank you. That was actually very helpful. And I believe Mr. Diamore is still having some technical challenges. So I'll move it to questions from the committee. Alder Antunes, do you have any questions?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Alder Roth?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to everyone who presented and for everything that you do. I do ride my bike a lot through there, and I see how active it is. I was at the Rock to Rock launch and saw how many people were there, and it's just been great over the years to see it much more activated. My few questions, though, I appreciate that we received language today that would amend the lease to sort of make it clear for that the grassy lot that kind of groups could coordinate in using it. I guess my question, like, is sort of technically, I mean, when I go by, there's sometimes people sitting at the table, there's people riding on the bike trail. Like, does the language have to be amended to make clear that sort of members of the general public can still be in that space if it's leased to someone else? Or, I mean, I just think if you leased a piece of property elsewhere and people just came onto the property, that people would say you're trespassing on my space. And I know that's not your intent. So I'm just wondering, does something have to be built into the language to allow people to still freely, as individuals, use those spaces?
Which I can answer that. I don't know if you want to answer it, Doreen, or I can answer it. There's nothing special that has to be put in the language because everyone has, to be put there other than what I've read, you already have, that people can use it. That's what it's there for. It's for the community to use. It's not being used all the time by CPEN. It's not used, just we have ours Thursday, Tuesdays, and Saturdays. Other than that, we never had any problem about whoever wants to use it. It's there to be used. That's what it's there for.
Thank you for that. I guess it's the lawyer in me sort of just feels like I completely understand your intent, but kind of this language actually wouldn't allow, I don't think. I mean, it would be good just to kind of think about, does some additional language need to be added to make clear that sort of someone who's not a neighborhood group, but is visiting and passing through the space is very welcome to be using it. So I guess I have a couple more questions I just wanted to mention.
I just want to add to that. So as a visionary in the plan for an underserved neighborhood, that was my impression. Again, I never lived there, but that's what I observed. Having the exercise equipment out of my budget, CPEN's, would engage the people on the trail with the neighborhood who is high at risk for health disparities. The water fountain, again, all we really needed was water to water the plants. But we put in a water fountain, again, so that people who are riding on the trail would be able to stop to get water. The tables and chairs are for both the neighborhood who has no bench. That was an issue when we used to have the round, when we were trying to get everything of what we wanted. There was a problem about having the table and chair there because the police didn't want loitering. And my question to them was, are you saying a neighborhood of 6,500 people don't deserve to have a place to sit in it? So things are there to make it so that it's available to anyone. We have a sign that's being made now that will be the sign of the members of the Learning Corridor Residential Council with a phone number if people have any questions, and it'll tell them that CPEN is there these little 12 to 13 hours that we're there every week. It'll, we're out there from April to December. So, pretty much even the neighborhood people participate in our stuff. And it is a schedule that I have kept just to keep my part, that I'm not trying to control everything that's happening there, was that we will only be here these days and these times. And it's been the exact same days and time over the years that I've been there.
Yeah, no, and I think it's all great how there's the seating and that people use it and the water and the bike pump. I just am thinking that technically in the lease to sort of kind of have the language match what you are doing in practice, I think
Okay.
would be a wise thing. My second question might seem a little, so, and this gets to liability. When a few years back, I was called as a juror on a trial against Hamden because someone got in an accident on the bike trail and they sued the city of Hamden. And so that popped into my mind, like the bike path that goes through there, it kind of who is, I just want to make sure, would CPEN be held liable in some way? And I don't want to put CPEN at, I guess, how does liability work in this space during a lease is my question, just to be sure you have plenty of.
With another entity that CPEN championed, which was the Communication Kiosk, everyone from the city told me it was okay, sounded like a great idea, you could do it. When we had our ribbon cutting, all of a sudden, they were like, who said that CPEN can put that there? And so it was then that we were made aware that that property has like 4 different groups a part of it. You have the state, you have the Connecticut Rail Trail people, you have the city of New Haven through Park and Rec, okay? And so the trail doesn't belong to CPEN. We manage all the property around the trail, the grass, the beautification stuff, the activities. So I don't foresee us being liable, if somebody's in our program or something, but I didn't see that. I mean, I wasn't looking at that as a liability that we would take on. With Aaron, I think mentioned how many people traveled on that trail. If they stop and get a drink of water, are we now liable if something happens? They fix their bike with the bicycle repair station that we put up. We're saying it's a public space. We just want to sort of be acknowledged for maintaining the space. We raise funds every year to have someone cut the grass and things. Why? Because we're doing activities out there and we don't want the grass up 9 to 12 inches. Not to say that the city doesn't do it, it just doesn't make it look nice. And we want, when people ride through, that they're saying to themselves, wow, this must be the city. Well, it's not. It's not the city. It's CPEN.
No, thank you. It's very helpful to know that the trail itself is not part of the lease and that that's separate and that belongs. I guess that was what my question was getting at. And believe me, I see people out there planting the flowers and all of that and appreciate all that you do. And I guess just my final question is just to make sure I understand why, like currently, it seems like it's working really well without actually a technical lease. And so it's just, is the reason you want a lease versus just continuing as you currently are, because it just gives you the certainty that someone, they won't say like, you can't be continuing with all your planning, like we have a new idea. This gives you 5 years to continue with the projects you're working on.
The reason for the lease is more or less that my vision, blood, sweat, tears, hours has been to benefit the people of New Hallville. A New Hallville person came to me and said that she wanted to get brand new coats for children in New Hallville. And could I help her? And I said, sure, we'll be your fiduciary and I'll help you with writing the grant. And she did get a grant for $10,000 that brought almost 500 coats, and she gave them out at the Learning Quarter. So it's really about empowering the people. When we host people to come into New Hallville to see this beautiful jewel that's hidden from New Haven, they then say to themselves, oh, we should come back here. Oh, we could come do this or we can come do that. What CPEN does by them going through us is we just make sure that it's going to benefit the people. Because I personally didn't build it for people from other neighborhoods to come in, and I want the New Hallville people to get a chance and opportunity to enjoy it. Now, I must say that if you have a place that's a square and has 6,500 people and has 4 alders a part of it, or 3 alders a part of it, right? Then there are some people I might not be impacting, because how would I do that? I would have to fly over there or something. So I just want the opportunity to do that. I don't think everybody in New Hallville knows that the mud hole is now the Learning Quarter and all the activities we do. We do a free pancake breakfast every Saturday. So in that 9 to 1, that is the main thing I don't want disrupted. The other thing is 9 to 12 on the Tuesday and Thursday is the time that we do all of the maintenance work. I wouldn't want somebody trying to host an event when my group has been doing that for 7 years at that time. So, you know, that's all that, you know, I was looking at, just saying, being able to say to New Hallville now, we have a saying there that says, when people ride through here, they see something that looks cared for. And we are able to say, it's ours. And we're proud of it. And that's the theme of the space.
Thank you.
Sorry, could I just add something, Alder Alder Festa? Is that, can I?
Yes, go right ahead. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, with respect to the triangular bars, with respect to the plant nursery, the 131 Hazel and 227, you know, DN is putting in some infrastructure there, some of which is fairly costly, like the greenhouse. We're in the process of making plans to install a greenhouse. And I think having the lease is helpful to CPEN in the same way that having 3 or 5 year leases is helpful for Gather New Haven, what was the New Haven Land Trust, is it provides a certain level of certainty and puts us on a more durable footing, so that when we go out and apply for grants, we can say with some certainty that if somebody gives us money for a greenhouse, that will be in place for at least 2 to 3 years, and we don't have to worry about the rug being pulled out from under us. So when we're trying to go out and get the resources to do some of this programming, it gives us that certainty that we can use to go to funders and attract those resources. So that's how I see it. It's just putting us on a firmer footing so that we can have certainty in terms of planning long-term what kind of programming CPAN wants to do to benefit the people of New Albany.
Are you all set, Alder Roth?
I am, and I appreciate everyone's thoughtful answers.
Okay, I just want to note, I do see there's, in the Q&A section, there are folks making comments. The public will be able to testify once the committee has done with, is complete with their questioning. So I appreciate the attendees' patience at this time. Alder Winter, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up on what Alder Roth was asking about, like she gave the example of Hamden getting involved in a lawsuit with something that happened on the trail. Why wouldn't the trail be included as part of the lease since it's part of the parcel? I don't know if that's a question for LCI or CPAN, but I just wanted to follow up on that train of thought.
Mr. Diamore, are you still having technical difficulties? Is there anyone that is able to even answer that question? I'm going to say because it's an independent entity and belongs to the city. And is there?
Yeah, I don't see us, CPAN or us answering that question. That would be whoever is responsible for the trail. You know, someone want to sue somebody, the trail don't belong to CPAN. So whatever, I guess Frank Diamore or somebody else that's over the trail.
I have been sued before because of accidents on the trail. Personally, wow. And in my capacity as a board member of the Farmington Canal Rail Trail Association and East Coast Greenway, et cetera. So yeah, the trail organizations will be sued, but I don't think CPAN will be sued. And the attorneys that I've spoken to, and obviously we should hear from LCI about this, but the attorneys that I've spoken to have said that this lease will in no way increase liability exposure to CPAN. But yes, me in my capacity as a trail advocate and a member of these trail organizations, yes, I will continue to be sued by litigious people, and the city will as well.
I think this is a question for LCI as well as Corporation Counsel, and our LCI person is having some challenges getting unmuted. I think we need to probably make note of this question and have it properly answered by the appropriate departments, if that's okay.
Through you, Madam Chair, could we request that?
Yes, Alder Winter. We'll make sure to get that answer for you from both LCI and Corporation Counsel.
Because to the point Ms. Abubakar mentioned, when we had the issue of the kiosk, that ended up coming before this committee and the Board of Alders because it wasn't a park, but it wasn't a street, and it was this like uncategorized city property for the kiosk. And so, yeah, it would just be helpful to know if there is any special distinction for the trail. And then I guess like, I just want to say that I think it's incredible how much the space has been transformed, even in the last couple of years, with all of the new amenities that were pushed for with the exercise equipment and the water fountain and the bench and all of the work that you all have done to continue to beautify the space with the plantings. It really is wonderful. So I wanted to thank you and CPAN for all of that. I also wanted to circle back to the question about people who are coming through the space. And it sounds like that's the intention. Everybody wants that. And I guess like, yeah, does that, to Alder Roth's point, would it be helpful to have something in the lease agreement to that effect as well for people who are like coming down, sitting on the bench? I think it sounds like everybody wants that. I guess I'm imagining like a hypothetical world in which it's like 4 years from now and CPEN has different people in charge and they change their minds. It seems very unlikely, but I wanted to note that concern. A question somebody asked me was about how outreach and involvement in the community happens. I know I usually hear about events through the management team, but if folks from CPEN could just speak to the strategy for getting the word out to community members.
Okay, well, I think one thing that we all should be aware of is that city organizations and other nonprofit organizations send things electronically. And for CPEN, you know, we do flyer. We have sort of a set season. So because of COVID, we received a grant to be a safe place for people to meet. So we had our cleaning station and hand sanitizer and mask and all this and chairs 6 feet apart. We used to have benches. So we had to buy chairs and everything. We had tents and we just sort of did all those things to accommodate that this is continuous. I'm there all the time. We're always here. So for the people who participate, including some of the city people started stopping by and riding their bikes around the time that we're having a pancake breakfast because they were able to talk to some people who were needing some assistance. We flyer to the best of our ability, but everybody knows it costs a lot of money to print flyers. And we are a grassroots nonprofit. I would say if anybody has any pull with the city's printing people, whatever, where I can get flyers made, I would love to have that. And then I'll just also mention that with our high school teams, we have created something called the Blitz Team. And the Blitz Team has worked for 5 organizations to flyer information to New Hallville people. So, you know, that is what we face as a nonprofit. And we try to do the best we can. Definitely, you know, for our festivals and all that kind of stuff, we put the flyers out for that stuff. And, you know, the pancakes breakfast has been going on since April. We have access to a lot though now. When you think about what Gather New Haven does with their lot, are they sending out flyers? No. People know that it's a community garden and the people that have been gardening down there start middling around there when it's their time to start planting and stuff. And when people walk by there, if they have questions or if they want to go in, they just go in. So in some cases, it feels as if we're the city and the nonprofits of New Haven. I'm also the founder of something called the Urban Nonprofit Network, where I know that there's 1,274 nonprofits registered to New Haven. Well, how do New Hallville people know about them?
One last question. The length of the lease, where did the number 5, how do we get to the number 5 as opposed to like 3 or 4 or 2 or
I just
whatever?
heard people telling me like Gather New Haven said that they get 1-year lease if they do good and there's no problems, they then ask for a 5-year lease. Gather New Haven is one of our partners, and basically, you know, I'm trying to follow a little bit of their model. Instead of doing just community gardens, what other things can we repurpose vacant lots or sliver lots for? So, you know, that's why I went, I just thought that was the gradual way that it went.
Thanks, Ms. Abubakar. And again, thanks for everything you all have done to beautify the space and for your willingness to be explicit in the agreement that this is about bringing in as many people and groups of the space to share it and make use of it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alder Winter. And before we continue with colleagues' questions, Mr. Dearmore has connected via phone. Do you have anything to add to this discussion?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Just state your name and address for the record.
Okay. Frank Dearmore, Deputy Director, LCI, 232 St. John Street, New Haven. I just want to say I apologize for the audio and video difficulties that I've been having to understand what's wrong. I was just on a meeting earlier. But anyway, I wanna say that LCI strongly supports the efforts of CPEN and Dorothy Abubakar and all the positive comments that were made here tonight, all the Clyburn and everyone else. I can't say enough. I've been following what they've been doing for years. Would like to say a 5-year lease, which is consistent to what we've been doing with some of the other garden groups in the city. And it's just to secure their effort for the next 5 years. They put a lot into it. They put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and I think you're being demonstrated here tonight. So that's the reason why we would like to continue their mission and their efforts. LCI strongly supports. I understand there's some legal questions with the lease. If I can, we can get them offline, or if you could send them to me, I will certainly try to get them answered the best we could. I don't want to speak on behalf of counsel, not an attorney, but I would like to get them answered in the best way I can. We will certainly get any responses back to you.
Okay, thank you. I think the main concern was whether why isn't the trail part of the lease agreement for that portion?
That's a good question. I'm sure there's a separate agreement with Parks Department for the whole Farmington Canal and the trail. I don't know if it could be incorporated. That's something I will certainly check.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Again,
Alder Singh, any questions?
Not at this time, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Alder Smith, any questions?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Doreen. I've known Doreen for such a long time, and I know the great work she does throughout the community. But one question that I would like to ask, have you been in contact with the community? Because I know you had a lot of different partners that was out there. Have you contacted surrounding residents to see how they feel about the lease of the parcels? And are you working in collaborations with the other folks that were out there doing some of the same things in which you were doing, gardening, the breakfast, and so on?
Mhm.
Can't hear you.
As far as unfortunately, I'm one person, and it's hard to keep telling my story from beginning to end. But in regards to the garden that is across the street, Mr. Alonso, I was asked to speak on a panel for Arts and Ideas, and I mentioned how Mr. Alonso had been gardening this garden for a very long time, and how I went to him and asked him if he would allow kids to come in to Mr. Alonso's garden. And Mr. Alonso agreed, and we also offered to give him a little stipend. And so when the kids would go over there, oh, we're going over to Mr. Alonso's garden, and he would tell them what he's growing and so on. Well, at that time, I saw that Mr. Alonso did not have water in that garden. He had to get the water from a neighboring store where there was an Indian guy who also supported CPEN for many years to give us water to water the plants that we had planted because there was no water there. When we got the grant of $100,000, we went forward with getting water, And when I saw that they had to get the water from across the street by Mr. Alonso's garden, that pipeline was running down that sidewalk and then coming under the street into the triangle, I asked if we could put a pipeline into Mr. Alonso's garden. And they did it. So the water that is in Mr. Alonso's garden right now, that is the garden across the street from the parcel that we lease, is CPEN's water. And CPEN pays the water bill.
Okay. One thing I want to ask this question again, because I've grown up in New Hallville.
Yes.
Born, raised in New Hallville. I know all about the garden that Mr.
Alonso.
My question to you once again, have you built any form of collaboration with other partners that are, and I'm asking you this for a reason, right? Because I understand, you know, about these lease agreements now and so on and the collaboration.
Okay.
Have you built a collaboration with the other partners that were there helping you out as far as the pancake breakfast, with the gardens? And I believe there's gardens over there now. Have you talked with the neighbors? Have you got anything as of petition signed by the neighbors that they are in agreement with all of this that have been happening or what's about to take place? Because one thing you don't want is angry residents to say, I've never heard of this was going to happen until I've seen it in the papers. No one never talked to me. Then all of your plans change. It changes totally.
Well, what I can say is that I have hundreds of members of New Hallville who participate in our events. We take attendance. We take addresses. There are hundreds of people that have participated in the work that CPEN does and are engaged in what CPEN does. Now, I will say that lately, there have been, you know, when I look at the number, it's like 2 people who I feel and who have made me feel as if my 12 to 13 hours and the work that I've done over 7 years, they don't agree with. Now, there are several groups in New Hallville, and I have talked to all of them. Whether or not that they want to engage with me or CPEN, I cannot control. But I have always offered my hand, and anybody who knows me, nobody could fathom that I would be one who would say, oh, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that. But I will say that, and Honda, you know me for a long time. I am a woman, I'm a strong woman, and I don't like being disrespected. And in some cases, that has been the approach, very aggressive and disrespectful. And I have chosen not to be vocal about it myself because there were witnesses. So if I want to, I can. But for me, I didn't do this for 2 people. You know, all I could keep doing is being, what's the word I want to say? Willing, okay? Willing to talk with anybody if they want to talk to me, willing to help them if they want to help, because I stand by CPEN's mission talks about helping New Hallville residents. It's not talking about helping New Haven, even though I've done my thing there. But my calling has been to help New Hallville residents in any way I can. Now, the way to help them is to communicate, but all I can do is offer, and all I can do is continue the work that I've been doing. And, you know, I have board members who are members of New Hallville. I have volunteers who are New Hallville, and we have paid for stipends of New Hallville people. So sometimes when you are dealing with confrontation from 1 or 2 people, you know, it's a little difficult. And I would say that you might know more of, from your question, more about what others are saying. And I am willing to have the conversation.
Well, to be honest, I don't know anything of what's going on in New Hallville. Unfortunately, but fortunate, my full commitment is what I'm doing is in 30. But being here with experience, and I'm talking on experience, and Mr. Diamore can assure you I'm talking with experience. I asked a question because you got to get the residents involved, and I understand the residents come out to your event, but they probably don't understand that you're trying to take on a 5-year lease with a parcel. And
No.
I would say, to go get petitions,
Okay.
make sure that you're basically collaborating with all parties, because 1 or 2 or 3 individuals can really knock and block anything that you're trying to do positive.
I know that, but I'm a little bit beyond that. I am fine with if you don't want to give the lease, okay? But I must say that I think from my end, I have proven my due diligence, my commitment to the neighborhood. And for me as a leader, educator, mother, I'm just doing all that I know to do. Now, if it comes down to getting signatures, that's not a problem. I got a grant to work. We gave 500 coats to children of New Hallville, so let's count that list, right? We worked with the seniors during COVID, did care packages to them. That's 100. Let's look at that list. And let's look at all the people that come and participate in the activities that we do. I have no problem submitting something that states that there are people behind us. We even have a CPEN residential council. So we have people. And you guys run for office, that there's people for you and against you. So that's just the way of it. I mean, I don't see that as being, like I got to have 650, 6,500 signatures. But we do try to focus on like 9 blocks around the Learning Quarter as our catch-all to flyer and so on.
Madam Chair, thank you. I'm finished with my questions.
Thank you, Alder Smith. All these lines of questioning, I think, Mr. Diamore, do you mind giving us a brief history of this property? Does it belong to the city? Does it belong to the parks? Give us a brief history, if you don't mind, and how this all became about, and is a petition necessary?
I don't know. So the property we've owned for a while, I think it's separated from the canal. There's 2 parcels, one across the street from another. References previously as the mud hole. It was a challenge for years, as everybody knows, with housing not wonderful housing over there. It came down, and the city's managed the property from then until recently, when CPEN approached the city and with their idea and their mission, and it seemed like a great idea, and it's been successful since we've started. They've taken over the lot across the street, which was another property that we acquired. There was housing there as well, demolished, doing nothing. We were maintaining it the best we could. So it was decided that, hey, we can expand the mission of CPAN to do gardening and growing and stuff like that. We fenced it, secured it. It's certainly much better, a whole lot better than what was there. Again, it's been successful. We agree. We think we support the mission. We don't we have other property that we could do housing development on. This only complements the neighborhood, some of the housing development that we've done in the past. This is something that, you know, we looked at and thought it was needed, and why not? It's something they give back to, you know, to the community.
Is this buildable land?
The land is buildable. Well, yes, it is buildable. If we wanted it, according to zoning size-wise, it's buildable, yeah. But
So
we have a lot of it. Of all the
I'm
districts.
going to mute
and
myself.
awards-
Hold on.
Of all the districts and awards, that we have more vacant lots in New Hallville, probably than anywhere in the city. And we're actually filling those lots in now. So yes, there is a need for housing, but there's also a need for green space. There's a need for things like this, can be, you know, that make a community what makes it, you know, a vibrant community.
So I guess I will preface, pardon. The city managed this property until CPEN took over, and this has been a cost savings to the city because we are taking our city employees and using them elsewhere, and CPEN has managed to take care of this property, clean it, doing everything that the city had done prior to CPEN. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. We encourage some of the other lots. That's why we encourage green spaces, URI, the New Haven Land Trust with some community gardens. Everyone that they take when they license or lease from us, or just, you know, we encourage, you know, people to adopt a lot, because everyone we don't have to maintain. We have quite a few of these throughout the city. There's probably 200 right now that we maintain. And it's quite a challenge. So everyone that, you know, we could do something with, doesn't have to be housing. It could be, you know, like I said, there's gardens and green spaces and things like what CPEN is doing. It's one more it takes out of our inventory temporarily.
Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And again, I'm just going to ask again for these types of lots that the city has dealt with. Is a petition needed to get the community on board? Do you recommend it? Should we make that a stipulation? What are the general rules for, like, even a community garden that we move forward?
We haven't up until now, we haven't done any. We haven't seen any petitions. We haven't required, and we haven't actually seen a need for them. Because it's a good thing. I mean, community gardens, you know, it's on a block. Other blocks surrounding it, they do use it, but it's impacted basically in the block. We look for volunteers that are right on, you know, right as close as possible. It's always been looked at as a good thing. Community gardens were always supported. Green spaces were always supported. I don't know. This would be something different if you suggested a what's the word I'm looking for? You know, a petition. I'm sorry.
Okay. I wish I were a mind reader, but I'm glad it came to you. Okay. I appreciate that. I see Alder Winter's hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to clarify, if you look at page 13 of the packet, the 224 piece doesn't actually include the trail itself. So that may be what Ms. Abubakar and Mr. Good were referencing. It's a triangle of land bound by Hazel and Shelton in between the trail and those streets. So I can't really tell if it would also include, like, the benches that Alder Roth mentioned and the fountain. I'm not sure, but the trail itself isn't included in that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alder Winter. Are there any other questions from the committee members before I open it up to the public? Okay, I don't see any hands up from committee members. If you all don't mind staying on just to hear from the public, I would appreciate it. But I'm going to set this up where, you know, we heard 2 items and we do have a workshop. The 2 items, I'm going to start with testimony for item 1. So anyone who wants to speak from the public on item number 1 regarding the residential parking, please raise your hand on your computers and we will let you in. Again, only for item number 1. Any testimony from the public? Okay, I don't see any of the attendees raising their hands, and so that would like to speak from the public. So I will move on to item number 2. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on the CPEN item? Please raise your hand and we will let you into the room. Okay, I see here Brother Bourne. Brother Bourne, do you have can you identify yourself by your name and can you get on camera?
All right. I'm trying to right now. Do you have to allow to do some, let me see. Hello?
There you are.
All right, they had to allow me to get in. I'm Brother Bourne, Yancey Horton, 126 Hazel Street, New Haven, Connecticut. My concern is what is CPEN going to be able to do there that they can't do there with the lease? And also, you know, just a statement, I'm one of the community members. I'm another one of the program creators that utilizes that zone over there. And so I'm just wondering, as somebody who Mr. Bubakar might have already alluded to, someone who might be in contention with someone just being able to have that space, because I'm, you know, at some point I'm afraid that Mr. Bubakar might not allow me to be in there because it would be leased to her. And because and you know, and maybe not me, but any other organization. So I don't want something like that to happen in the community, at least at the junk, at least at the space that where the turtle was held at, where the bike trail goes through, and there's the where the water fountain is. I think that space here shouldn't be leased to a private organization. The other lot spaces, I think, you know, they're all to the side of a good thing. But I think that space right there should not be leased to any private organization, especially if they're already there with no problem, beautifying, being able to do the things that they're doing. I think that it would be, you know, more collaborative and especially from the people in the community to not see someone come in and colonize pieces of land, because that's what it looks like in our community. It looks like colonization. And, you know, so that's what's going on. So I'm just concerned about that. And I just really wouldn't like for that to happen. And a couple years down the line, I'm not allowed to be over there on a Saturday or a Sunday when I do the breakfast that I created, when I do the lunch that I created, when I do the clothing drives and things of that nature that I've been doing in this community for free all year round. So I would like for the CPEN to really look into working with us properly and not the community have to work with CPEN. Because if you're someone who comes into a community, you should come into the community looking to benefit the community and not just take ideas and benefit yourself, because that's some things that I don't like that. And I don't want that to happen. As we stated, there are things over there that should be utilized for wheelchair people, but they're not. So I want that helped out. And I'm glad Mr. Bubakar had got at least the wheelchair things, but it's not accessible for us. And she has done some good things in the community as, you know, beautifying. It's exemplary. But I don't think that lease of that space right there would be a good thing. And I think a lot of residents, if they found out that it was being leased and leased out, and you know, they would look at that very strangely. very strangely. And so that's my statements right now on that subject. I just, as a community member, am thoroughly against definitely that main space, that larger space, that larger parcel that LCI has control of now. I would rather that still stay public space and not leased off to someone who could then dictate when someone else could come out there, even though now they're saying that's not part of their plan, but plans change. So with that being said, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. You know what? I had one question for Ms. Abubakar, and that is, what are your hours? Again, you mentioned 9 to 12 Tuesdays and Thursdays is maintenance. What are your hours the rest of the time?
5 to 7:30 on Thursdays only, and Saturdays 9 to 1.
And that is for the entire parcel that we're questioning tonight, all 3 properties.
Yes, and I just want to add again that CPEN secured the funds for everything that the young man just mentioned. CPEN is the only one that keeps the space clean. We have those hours. We invite people to come back to do cleanup. You know, I can understand, you know, why you wouldn't want to, I mean, why they're not people running to clean up when they're trying to find a job or take care of their families. You know, I can understand that. So we had to secure funds then to pay someone to do it. And, you know, even if, you know, in the lease in some way it was stated those hours, I've done those hours for 7 years. And tell you the truth, I am the vice president of Elm City Parks Conservancy, so I understand how parks and stuff work. And, you know, I was concerned about people outside permitting the space and then hosting activities that is not, who did not do their due diligence to invite the community and things like that. So I was looking at this kind of 5-year thing would give CPEN the opportunity to continue to support residents in leadership to really manage and oversee the space that they created. That's what I love about what I put in place. I am the transplant. The flowers are being planted by New Hallville people. The lawnmower is being run by New Hallville people. The bikes are being ridden by New Hallville people. Now, the bikes do add liability. Take the bikes out of the box and you have people just riding around. You can't do that. So we do tours. I've done my due diligence to go around to the biking community and ask people, would they volunteer to take people out on bikes? I mean, at the end of the day, either people want to get paid or people need to volunteer. So when they ask about the bikes, you know, they're not being ridden because I have no people willing to take people out for a ride, you know? So when I do, on Saturdays, when we have the pancake breakfast, I have a young man that works for us. If people want to ride the bikes, he takes them for a ride. So that's what we've been able to do.
Thank you. I'm going to continue the public testimony with Mr. Sean Reeves. Mr. Reeves, if you could turn on your camera and name and address for the record, please. Mr. Reeves?
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead and state your name and address for the record and give your testimony.
My name is Sean Reeves. I live at 188 Hazel Street, New Haven, Connecticut. I'm a lifelong community resident, been here 48 years now. I'm not really in agreement with that particular piece of parcel being leased, which is currently the learning corridor. I don't really see the benefit to the community in the space being leased. It's already being maintained. The community, as I see it, doesn't really understand the mechanics of that learning corridor and how it actually works. I walked down there and got introduced to the space and was told that someone adopted my community 7 years ago. They also told me, you know, there's hours of operation that they adhere to, and then, you know, other community residents can have the space to do other things with during the other hours. I was fine with that. But at the same time that I was fine with that, I wasn't fine with the fact that I was being told what I can do in what I thought was a public space during certain times of the day. And I live 4 houses down the street. You know, and the reason why I really kind of walked down there one day, because on Saturday mornings I was pulling up here and there's like a bunch of kids that live 2 doors down from me in 2 different houses. And they always come up and, you know, kind of ask me what was going on down the street. And I never really knew. One day, big bike ride going on, you know, another day, big cleanup. They didn't know, I didn't know. And, you know, I was a little ashamed because I'm a community resident and I'm a community leader here now. And they looked to me for answers and I didn't have them for those babies. I'm not saying what she's doing down there isn't a good thing. What I am saying is there's not enough community engagement, not in my neighborhood, anyway, in 4 directions. And there needs to be a lot more of that. I've gotten 1 flyer in my mailbox since I've been here. I've taken care of my mother in this house for 2 years, who is blind, dealing with cancer. Again, my uncle lives upstairs. When I ask questions, he doesn't have the answer. When I ask my next door neighbors, they don't have the answers. That means something to a person like me today. I don't think leasing that land to anyone is a good idea at the moment. Now, empowering my community to understand the mechanics of how this stuff works, because I didn't even know that the other 2 parcels were leased to anyone. You know, I know it's a community garden there that I'm now actively involved in because the man, Mr. Alonzo, who my mom used to help until she could no longer help, is 93 now. You know, I know he enjoys our company there. He enjoys the babies that actually come in there and the other residents that come in there. And he's proud of what we're doing as community residents. I was a community resident that once sold drugs in those same corners. It's a different system for me. I live here. I've lived here my entire life when it was rocks down there. You know, when it was alcohol infested property down there, and I love what happened down there now. I do. But I want my community to now have a chance to be empowered and inspired to do great things for themselves and show the world that they too can do these things on their own when they have the information that I now have access to. They deserve a chance. That's my statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves, for your passionate statement, and wishing your family good health, and will be in my prayers. Is there anyone else from the public? Alder Edwards, I see your hand up. I wasn't ignoring you. Go ahead. Name and address for the record and testify.
Thank you. My name is Kimberly Edwards. I live at 122 Sheffield Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut, 06511. And I have a question. One of my questions would be, If you were intending to lease, why would you not just lease the space that you need to hold like your equipment and stuff on, versus the whole parcel? I think another one of my questions would also be, and I don't know if this is a question the city needs to answer, with all these equipment in the space, which part of the equipment was purchased or leased as part of our burn grant agreement? Because we did have many focus groups in the community, and I think everybody here heard of a burn grant, and there was a lot of things the city was supposed to provide in that learning corridor. And I know some things probably still are not in place. And I just think we need to take inventory of what is in that space, what has been put in that space by CPEN versus what was put in that space by city funds through the burn grant, and what else is supposed to be in that lease space. I think that inventory needs to be taken before we talk about leasing that space to anyone. And I am a supporter of CPEN. I think your programming is excellent. So I'm not against your programming and everything you do in that space. But I think as an official, those are very important questions to me. And it might give some clarity or help us disseminate what's really happening for which piece of what land. And because I'm not on the committee, you know, I don't have the packet with this section, this triangle, this, that. So those would be a couple of my questions starting off, because I would like to just make sure it's also, if we lease that space to someone, I do want to make sure the company's able, not the company, the community is able to still freely share that space as they should be.
Okay, CPEN has purchased everything that is all the equipment there. Secured $100,000 grant, and everything that's there was brought from that. And then we raised the money, $5,200 for the state-of-the-art water fountain that is there. What is not there is, there was supposed to be 2 flower ink. Now, we actually have a picture of this that, like we mentioned earlier, that David Moser had drew up for CPEN. And when we got the money, all those who were around the table, city people, agreed on the plan. So the plan is supposed to have 2 concrete walls with gardens in front of them on the corner caps of Hazel Street and Shelton Avenue. There was supposed to be a horseshoe pit in the space where, across the street from the triangle, that little sliver is supposed to be a horseshoe pit. What else is not there is, let's see, the bicycle rack. There's supposed to be a bicycle rack that's not there. The burn grant put in the lights, which are still not on. The lantern part there. And they, you know, me personally, I never saw the burn grant funds. I know that it's a part of the budget, so I'm not 100% sure of if anything that's not there that their money is being used for. But I know that the lighting, the good thing about that though is Giovanni was over like a week and a half ago, and so they're now working on the electricity and stuff for the lighting that's been there for 2 to 3 years.
Thank you. So I guess the end of my testimony will be, I like I said, I love your work and the time you put in, but I question the city as well on, yeah, we need to save money. We want beautification, but I just question how we do it. And I do think we need to make sure inventory is taken over there. If there was something the city was supposed to have installed through whatever funding or whatever, it should be done in a timely fashion. And we know things happen. We know we had COVID, but I really do question how the leasing will affect the community, and as far as if other groups do want to use that space. And I will end with that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alder Edwards.
Okay. Madam Chair, I would like to say something.
Go ahead. I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of the time and that we still have a workshop to conduct. Thank you. Go ahead, Alder Clyburn.
Yes. I would like to say anybody could use the space. This space came about from hundreds of people who signed with us. The community know. The gentleman said people on Hazel Street don't know. Hazel Street know. For many years we had the fall festival. They knew about. Matter of fact, people on that street donated food to us when we couldn't afford everything ourselves. They would donate things so we could have for the community. So I know they did.
We also closed the
maybe
street.
haven't spread wide. Hazel Street people have helped us with our fall festivals. They have given us, they have invested their monies to make sure that we have, cupcakes for the children, candy apples for the children, popcorn for the children. I know that street well know of the learning corridor. People know about the learning corridor, and I keep hearing people can use it. It's been used for years by the community for whatever they wanted to use it for. So it's used by the community. The community do know. Maybe on our other street, I know a lot of the streets know, because when we take when people sign in, they sign in with their name and address. I don't know if we still have all that information, but the people know the learning corridor is there, and people know what it used to be. And I hear people saying, thank you for doing this transition for this area, that now we, the community, have a space to gather and enjoy. Whoever wants to enjoy that area is welcome. And I think we should have the lease. This is something that we did not have. Now we have something. We have brought life to our community, to the people here. And I think we still should continue to bring life. We're growing. Just because now we have a name, CPEN, we were growing without the name. So we have a name now. And nothing has changed. Only thing has changed, we're bringing more things for the community to enjoy.
Thank you, Alder Clyburn. At this time, I will ask for a second time if there is anyone from the public that would like to speak on this item. Once again, I will ask for the third time. The first time was the very first time I asked, if anyone is wondering. That was a while ago. So for the third time, if there is anyone from the public that would like to testify on this item, please raise your hand and we will let you in. Okay, seeing no hands up in the attendee list,
Madam Chair, I move that we close the public portion.
Second.
The public hearing has been moved and seconded.
Excuse me, sorry, we can't close the public hearing yet.
Oh, you're right, because the workshop is also a public hearing. Thank you, Misty, for that reminder. Yes, it was submitted as a workshop and public hearing. Okay, at this point, we will move on to the workshop / public hearing.
Madam Chair, point of order.
Yes,
Seeing it's gone a long time, can we vote on the first two items before going into the workshop?
yes, we can do that. Do I hear a motion to move the first item?
I move the
Like to
item.
move the first item?
Second.
Okay, item 1 has been moved and seconded. Any discussion on item number 1? Go ahead, Alder Antunes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, since there was a question on the necessity of us going through this whole process, if it's already in place, the Traffic Commission has a scheduled meeting on the 13th of this month. Can, through you, direct the acting director to put that on their agenda so they could address it at that meeting?
We can. I actually checked with our legislative office and they recommend, the recommendation was to move forward with a vote from this committee.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any further discussion on item number 1? Please raise your hand. Alder Roth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I guess if they recommend that, I'm fine with that. If on the 13th, the traffic authority rules in favor of it and says they're all set, would we then kind of when we actually vote on this, take some alternative action? I mean, I guess it can't do any harm to say we approve it too, but it seems redundant.
You know what, I think just to make things easier, I'm going to take the advice of the legislative office and just move forward just to,
Yeah.
I mean, if they do want to hear it at the traffic authority, I don't have a problem with it. And maybe what we could do when it comes down for us to vote is do a read and file.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's exactly what I was trying to say, but did not articulate well. So that I think that makes sense.
And I will check again with our office to see what the procedure is at that moment in time. So thank you, Alder Roth. Any other discussion? Okay. I encourage my colleagues to support this, being someone who knows this street pretty well, having grown up there and understanding the parking concerns of the church. I hope everyone will support this item. Okay, are we ready for a vote? Any further discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can we clarify, is this going to be just to move the enforcement and post the signs, or is it going to include increasing the parking time from 2 hours to 3 hours? That came up in the conversation, increasing. the time.
Correct. I mean, is anyone wanting to make a motion, an amendment? Is
Well,
that?
Madam Chair, I feel like the acting director of TTP may have said that that's something that could be brought before the parking authority to extend the hours, and that she could ask them. So maybe that is the body who does it. I don't know. I feel like she said that, but please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, actually, you're right, Alder Roth. I think it's something that the parking authority can listen to that request from First Presbyterian.
And usually they have a recommendation from the alder and the ward as well.
And I see a thumbs up from Alder Edwards. So thank you, Alder Edwards. Also, before we continue, we do have to make a motion to amend a motion to make it a pending 3 signatures because, and those signatures need to be from 3 separate households. So do I hear a motion to amend?
Madam Chair, I move to amend that we'd only vote in favor if there are 3 additional signatures from 3 different households on the adjoining street.
Second.
Okay, the amendment has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, at this time, we will vote only on the amendment to get the 3 separate signatures from 3 separate households. So we will take a vote. I am a yes. Alder Antunes,
Yes.
Alder Roth,
Yes.
Alder Winter,
Yes.
Alder Singh,
Yes.
Alder Smith.
Yes.
Okay, the amendment rules. Now we will vote on the overall amended item. Everyone in favor of this item, please say yes. Alder Antunes,
Yes.
Alder Roth,
Yes.
Alder Winter,
Yes.
Alder Singh,
Yes.
Alder Smith,
Yes.
and I am a yes. So the motion carries, the yeas have it. Do I hear a motion to move item number 2?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
my motion is to move item 2 with the exception of the Hazel Street properties. That was the one with the big question on it. So I move to approve the first 2 sites and not the 3rd until there can be some clarification.
Second.
Okay. I just want to make
Point of-
sure that Missy, do we need to make an amendment for that?
No, that's the motion on the floor.
Point of clarification, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Alder Winter.
There's a 224 Shelton was the one that had the questions and concerns. Is that the one that the intention would be to remove?
Yes, it is. I'm
Thank
sorry,
you,
I had
Madam.
the address street wrong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would second that.
Okay, so the motion on the floor has been moved and seconded. We will take a vote on eliminating the 224 Shelton portion of this lease agreement. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you for. Okay, so Alder Antunes, are you in favor of that?
Yes.
Alder Roth?
Madam Chair, we're going to have discussion after.
Oh, sorry, we can have discussion now on that, sorry. Discussion on the removal of 224 Shelton from the lease agreement. Alder Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Alder Antunes alluded to the questions and concerns around that one lot, but it does seem like even for members of the community who have concerns that they are not related to the other 2 parcels. And it does sound like CPEN has significant plans with the greenhouse going in one of those. And so I think it's important that we support all of the great efforts that they're making to beautify and provide opportunities for folks to improve the area. But I think Alder Antunes' point of focusing on those 2 lots that are not points of contention is the best place for us to start that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alder Winter. Alder Roth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, first, I just want to acknowledge, obviously, I think everyone who's spoken tonight agrees that the efforts of CPEN have greatly improved this area and are very appreciated. But I do, I appreciated Alder Smith's point about outreach to the community. I think there is a difference between a sliver lot that's just sort of not being used for anything in any way that's kind of being used very productively now with all these plans versus what I view what's more like a public park area that I think without outreach to, I just think Mr. Good, who's supportive of this, hadn't realized that was part of it, to not have outreach, to suddenly have a lease, a 5-year lease for kind of what's viewed as, I think, a park and a public space. And I very much appreciate the intent that people sort of want to continue. That is welcoming to everyone. But the reality is, if you have a lease, that it changes the character of it. And I also appreciated Mr. Good's point as to why a lease is important for those other spaces, that there's going to be infrastructure and it helps with getting grants, but it didn't sound to me like that those plans were for the grassy area. And it's, you know, I'm grateful that the community, it beautifies it now, but I didn't see any need as of, I haven't yet kind of understood why a lease is needed for that space. And at the same time, I see the downsides, but particularly without public outreach and input, that suddenly it's going to become a private space. And so, yeah, so I support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Roth. Alder Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I first would like to say that I know that the director of CPEN does an extraordinary job into the community. That is no question that's in my mind. I've known her for such a long time. She is a visionary and she does a lot of stuff. I've been to several of the community events, but I do believe that community needs to be well informed and well involved into the leasing of that property. It is an open space and I've seen the children has been enjoying it, and I don't want to see any hindrance to go in where there is confusion or conflict that can form into a community where it brings the community at hand. So I do support her efforts, but I do also support this, putting this to the back until we get further clarification of how the community engagement is going to happen. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alder Smith. I appreciate that. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair.
Alder Singh, go ahead.
Thank you. I echo what Alder Smith is saying. If we can look at the language in terms of a lease or MOU for the spaces, which that's something if my colleagues would entertain, to, you know, just to put some thought in. Lease is very strong, but an MOU, it's a whole, you know, it's on a different level of usage. Because the leases comes in with a legal ramification and comes in with that. But an MOU, you know, would serve the purpose, but with the same language. Just my thought. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alder Singh. I mean, it's a good idea. How would we approach this? As you know, would we vote on Al or Misty? Would we make a motion to do an MOU? How do we proceed if we want to do an MOU?
Well, one thing at a time, Madam Chair, you have a motion on the floor right now.
So you, unfortunately, your microphone is not working properly.
There's a motion on the floor already, she said, so we have to act on that.
Okay, so we'll act on the motion of removing the 224 Shelton from the lease and see how folks support that or not. So any further discussion on this item before we vote on removing 224 Shelton from the lease agreement? Okay, seeing no hands. Let's take a vote. Again, this is a vote to remove from the lease agreement 224 Shelton. Alder Antunes.
Yes.
Alder Roth.
Yes.
Alder Winter.
Yes.
Alder Singh.
Yes.
Alder Smith.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. So the yeas have it. So we'll need to make a note, Misty, to remove the 224 Shelton from the lease agreement. Thank you. Okay, now, is there any further discussion on the overall item? Any other proposals? Here's our opportunity if we need to make any amendments or change anything else in the lease agreement. Please raise your hand. Go ahead, Alder Winter.
Well, I would just say, I think that the motion as amended, helps to meet some of the concerns that were raised tonight. But I do want to just focus on the broader item and really celebrate all of the good work that Ms. Abubakar and CPEN and Mr. Good and all the other folks who've been involved from New Hallville and from outside New Hallville as well to make a space that really was, not cared for, to put it mildly, and turn it into a place that is so vibrant that, we'll spend a couple hours just talking about, how it legally should be handled as a public space. So I think that there's just incredible value in what they've done. And I would encourage my colleagues to support them and to support the motion as amended. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alder Winter. Any further discussion on the full item as amended? I too am in agreement and echo what Alder Winter has said. With the elimination of that one thorn, it seems like we can all I think we can satisfy everyone's actions on this. So let's vote on the item if there is no further discussion. Alder Antunes, are you in favor?
Yes.
Alder Roth?
Yes.
Alder Winter?
Yes.
Alder Singh?
Yes.
Alder Smith?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. So the item moves. Now we will move forward to our workshop. If we can have everyone join us who is part of, it looks like we have the clerk's office here, and we have the registrar's office here. And just a reminder for everyone who is going to be speaking, we will need your name and address for the record. So we can start with the city clerk's office. I believe I know that both of your departments have received questions in advance. And we did receive the answers mid-afternoon, so we appreciate that. We are the maker of the actual communication. Do I see Aaron Good? There you are, is present. So I will ask Mr. Good to present his case, his concerns, and then we can answer the questions from the registrar and the clerk. Mr. Good, the floor is yours. Name and address for the record, please.
Hi, hello again. Aaron Good, 45 William Street, New Haven. And thank you, Madam Chair, for having this hearing. And thank you to President Walker Myers for responding to our communication from the League of Women Voters. Last fall's election went very smoothly. It went, I think, very well overall, but I do think it's a very useful exercise, very helpful for the public to have a hearing like this at least once a year, whether the most recent election, experienced significant problems or not. It's especially important to do this, to hold this kind of hearing right now, because our voting procedures continue to be in flux, due partly to COVID, but not just due to COVID. Also, because of the continuing changes that are happening in our state laws related to voting, because the state legislature is continuing to try to make it easier to vote and change our statutes to make it easier for people to vote. So it's important for us at the local level, the Board of Alders and our election officials to review those changes and how they're being implemented at the local level, and to do so in a transparent way so the public knows what's going on and can see what's going on. And it's also useful for groups like mine, the League of Women Voters, because we were able to provide, I think, very useful assistance to the clerk's office last fall, sorting absentee ballots and doing other critical functions. And we were very glad to be able to play that role during COVID and to assist the community in that way. But we need transparency for us to know that we can play that role, and so that we can kind of plug in. And we're more than happy to play that role again if called upon to do so. So that's just like by way of introduction. I have some more thoughts and ideas about our voting procedures and how things have been going, and some suggestions going forward. I can say that now or later when you do the open up to the public, whatever is best for you, Madam Chair.
I think you can go on with your with your comments at this point.
Okay, sure. So just a few things. I think there's some, in terms of outreach, there continue to be some issues with the information on the city's website about voting. There is some outdated information on there about changing parties, and there's some other things that are no longer applicable. There's no information about who is eligible to receive an absentee ballot right now in the state of Connecticut. This is something that's been in flux. There's no mention that the absentee ballot eligibility law was changed in the most recent legislative session pursuant to the expiration of the governor's executive order 10E. I think that's very important information that we should have on the website. The one link to the absentee ballot application on the city's website, that link is broken. The dog license application on the website works perfectly well, but if you're trying to get an absentee ballot, you're out of luck. So hopefully that can be fixed as soon as possible. With respect to a second EDR location, I see from some written responses that were provided by the registrars, this is apparently still being considered by our election officials. I don't know what exactly that means, but I continue to think that having a second EDR location is probably a good idea given some of the problems that we've had in the past, although those problems were somewhat more muted in 2020. With respect to the drop boxes, we're going to continue, I think, to have the drop boxes because of the law that was just passed in the legislative session in Hartford. If we continue to have 4 drop boxes in New Haven, I think it makes sense to not cluster all of those at the same location as we did last year. If we don't have 4 drop boxes, if we only have 1 or 2, obviously that may be a moot issue, but that's another thing to consider. Absentee ballot tracking. One of the big issues for many people last year was not being able to track their absentee ballot to see whether it was counted or not. I sympathize with the clerk's office that entering data into the state's CVR system, the Central Voter Registration Database, is not their highest priority. But we need to figure out how to better sync our AB database with the state's database. I dropped off my absentee ballot in the drop box 2 weeks before the election. It never showed up as having been received. So I had to go to the polls on election day just to see if it had been received. And I kept checking the CVR until a month after the election, and it never showed up there. So I think that the clerk's office is taking steps to address this, and hopefully it will be addressed. Redistricting, it's true, redistricting is not something that's going to affect this year's election, but I do think we need to be planning proactively about how we're going to educate voters about changes that are going to inevitably affect many of them. Obviously, the details are unknown at this point, but there are, educated guesses we can make about what poll places are likely to change, how many voters will be affected, will there be an education campaign of some kind to educate those voters who are affected. By the time the redistricting occurs in the next 6 to 9 months, which is not that far off, we should already have an outreach and awareness plan in place that's ready to go. And I would also suggest that the registrars may want to compile a brief summary or report about how many voters are currently affected by district lines that cause their polls to change from even to odd years. This has been a big problem. That information may be very useful to the aldermanic committee that is in charge of redistricting as they're doing their deliberations about how to redraw the district lines. And then finally, I just want to reiterate the League of Women Voters was very glad to assist the clerk's office last year with sorting the absentee ballots in the weeks leading up to Election Day. And if necessary, we're happy to do that again, as long as we get notified sufficiently in advance. You know, our annual meeting is coming up July 28th. I'd be happy to make an announcement there and mobilize our membership to do whatever we can to assist with a smooth election this fall. So thank you again for holding the hearing, and I look forward to a problem-free election this fall for all of our voters. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Good. Appreciate all of your comments, concerns, questions. At this time, I will open it up to the city clerk's office. So May, if you could state your name and address for the record, and then add any information that or updates that you have for us. May, I don't see you because you're on your phone, so you'll need to unmute. What is the code to unmute? Is it when you're on the phone? Does anyone know?
I think it's pound 9.
No, star six.
Star 6. If you're on the phone, it's star 6 to unmute. Okay, you know what? I will move on to the registrar's office, and I see Lisa Malone. If you could state your name and address for the record, please, and offer any updates and possibly go through the questions and with some answers.
Okay, so I am in the meeting. I was not here representing the office. My name is Lisa Malone. My address is 21 Anthony Drive, New Haven. And I'm trying to think, okay, so some of Aaron's questions that possibly I can assist with. I agree with a lot of what he said, that we do need to do more outreach. Chanel and Marlene are meeting more frequently about things coming up with the election. I don't know any concrete information that has been decided, but I know that they are looking forward to a smooth process. And I've always been an advocate of education and getting work out there, the word out there as to polling locations, how to register, things to do. So if there's any questions that I can answer, I'd be happy to. If not, I certainly would refer you to Chanel or Marlene.
So Lisa, I'm not sure. There were questions that were submitted to the registrar's office in advance of this meeting. I'm not sure if you're able to address them or even saw them. If you could just enlighten us.
Okay, so I did not see the questions. I am guessing that Chanel and Marlene may have worked on it or are working on it. I don't have any information on that.
Okay.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. We were hoping that one of the registrars would be here to address the questions and the answers that they did provide us. But of course, there's always additional information that's always helpful from the committee. I do want to note, though, for the record, that we did that questions were submitted to both the clerk's office and the registrar's office. We did receive some brief answers to most of the questions, and I'd like to enter them for the record. Thanks, Lisa, for being here. I appreciate it. Do we have May?
You're welcome. Thank you.
on? Oh, I don't see May Reed. Okay, we may have lost May Reed from the clerk's office. Committee members, I'm going to open it up to you all. I can read the questions and the answers, or we could just submit them for public testimony. It's a little unfortunate that this is, it's voting. It's one of our rights. It's incredibly important for us to get answers. And with all the challenges that we've been facing, particularly in the last year and a half, it's always good to get updates from our departments, particularly from elected officials like we are. And, if we want, we can, I see May is back on. I will allow May to speak first if that's okay, and then I'll open it up for committee members. May, are you on? May? Okay, Ms. Gardner, when you are able, we can't hear you or see you, so I don't know if your mic is not functioning. I'm just going to open it up to my colleagues for questions, comments, concerns. If you and Lisa can hear us, at least make note of them, and hopefully we can get some answers tonight before we close this workshop and public hearing. I will ask the committee members if they have any questions. Once again, Alder Roth, I'll begin with you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate Aaron Good requesting this hearing workshop, and I agree with all of his points. I also appreciate May trying to connect with us and her thoughtful responses to the questions, and I appreciate Lisa being here. I guess my initial question for Lisa, you said you weren't representing the office, you're just here for the meeting. Could you just explain what you meant by that? I wasn't quite sure what you meant.
So I didn't know that the office needed representation. I saw the link that there was a hearing, and I certainly am involved in so many organizations throughout the city, and this I'm very passionate about as well. So that is the reason I came on to the meeting. And I wanted to see what is out there, because anyway, I feel we can advocate change, I'm on it. And, I can help and answer whatever I know, but I didn't realize it was something where our office was actually supposed to be here with the answers. Or I would have probably researched where the answers were and pushed a little to get you some feedback.
Great. Well, I thank you for that answer, and I appreciate your taking the initiative to just attend because you care about this. It's very appreciated. We did get some responses this afternoon to our questions, but I have a few that I just had some follow-ups on, and I know it's a late night, so I'll just ask a few. One thing that affects my ward a lot is college students being confused where to go, and a lot of time is wasted and the lines made long by people being in the wrong line. And so I asked about outreach for the primary, particularly because it's September 14th, soon after students are returning. And the response was that the office sends out postcards to inform the public of the upcoming elections and the locations of their polling site. When I asked how they're working with the colleges, I'm hoping that there's a little more than that, because students move from year to year. I just don't think that's going to be effective. Do you know if there is any outreach to sort of leadership of local colleges and universities? And if not, would it be possible to do some to have the university and the students who are active in politics there help spread the message to other students?
So that is a huge factor, exactly for the reason you said. The students every year are in a different dorm. I know I can speak for myself. What I do, my active role is when students either come, primarily if we get to see them, they come to register. I could always say to them annually, if you change your dorm, you need to change your address. You have to update with us. You know, there's really no definitive line of communication for these college students to know this. And yes, what happens is they come in and they go to the polling place and they say, oh, I'm in Yale, Berkeley, and they were somewhere else last year and they're not on this list. So now they have to fill out a new card. And like you said, they do go from place to place. I thought at one point, like this has been ongoing, I'm in the office almost 7 years. I thought at one point Chanel was going to have communication with some people at Yale that would be able to communicate with them, that they have to change their address, update, and, you know, let us know where they are every year. I don't believe that happened, but I can't say for sure. But that is a huge factor. And I just do really think that we need a liaison between maybe a Yale political science professor, students, somebody that would want to take the lead and do somehow, there's got to be a way, the school sends out massive emails to everyone that can send out massive emails to, hey, reminder to update your address if you are voting in Connecticut. There are students that like to register in Connecticut and at home. If they don't get to do the AB at home, they want to come here. Personally, I think they need to make a choice. Either they're voting here or there, and not just in case I can't get there, I'm going to do this kind of thing. But I think there's got to be some way that Yale can have a designated person, and whoever is in that title each year can work with our office to communicate the information about the addresses and where they vote.
Thank you. I mean, that all makes complete sense, and I'd certainly be happy, and I'm guessing Alder Saban would be happy as a Yale student who also experiences the problem of people going to the wrong location, to have conversations with you or Chanel, Marlene, about trying to find a contact there, if that would be helpful. So just please offer that up to them to follow up. My second question is just, one of the questions we asked was about COVID and kind of what are going to be the requirements. And it said it would be based on what the Secretary of State says, like if people have to wear masks and things like that. And I guess, so I wasn't clear if the Secretary of State has said anything yet, if there's any known date as to when the Secretary of State will make a decision on that. I just have no idea what the thought is around the COVID precautions.
My personal thought is, I don't know that the Secretary of State will make a ruling on that. She very well may, or if that would be something that would be designated through the city, because the city and, you know, our mayor is very strong in advocating as to how he would like things operated. The buildings are not open yet, even for people to come in. So polling places, yes, were open the last election and we did fine. You know, they did social distancing, they did gloves, hand sanitizers. So they did all of the PPE protocol in place. And I would think that is probably going to be the safe bet as far as masks wearing in the polling place. I don't know, because as we all know, you can go to one store, they say we require it to enter, other stores say it's optional. So I would tend to think that would be probably something that how the mayor is designated, the city's going to operate. I think it would just filter on down.
Okay, thanks for that. And just one final question, since given the time. So we had a question about how many people are going to be hired, and it said approximately 260, and how many of these have you hired to date? And the answer was in process. I guess I don't have a sense of how many more need to be hired as we're 2 months out. But I guess, again, just to offer up, if maybe since it's many fewer people than last time, maybe there's a full list of people to pull from. But if you need help from alders, recruiting people, I know I often, let us know if you need us to spread the word because you're actually only have hired like 25 people so far or something. I just have no sense how many more you need. So if we could get an update on sort of how many are hired and if we can be helpful in outreach, that would be great so that it's well staffed come election day and everyone has plenty of time to train.
I will pass that along. They also do an application process. So if any of the alders do know people that would like to work, they would like everyone to go on the city site website and put an application in. And those applications come electronically through the office. So therefore they will pull names and call people for working. And, that is one step that you probably can do with or without the need. If
Okay.
we get too many, I think it's always better that we get too many applications. Like 2020 election, we had so many applications that we didn't need extra people. But I don't think, too many can hurt us.
Great. I'll encourage people to go on the website and fill out an application.
Yeah.
Thank you. And again, thanks for coming and thanks to, and May, maybe I see a microphone now, which is a good sign for May.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad I was able to be here and help.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I saw that you were from the registrar's office, so.
Oh, that's okay.
So I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Before I continue with my colleagues, May Gardner, hi, are you able to get on? I see your microphone is on and it was probably off before, but it's back on again. Okay, I'm going to continue with the committee members. Oh, May, it's off again. Can you hear me? Still can't hear you, May. Okay, Alder Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to start by thanking the registrar's office and the clerk's office for really heroic effort in terms of all of the different changes and demands that came up in the highly unusual election we had last year. With regard to the registrar portion of this, there's been this ongoing question and request to have a find your polling location link put on the website. And I wanted to follow up to see if that's something we could accommodate. I think the registration piece is super clear and it's very prominent, but for somebody who wants to know, hey, I put in my my name or my address, or name and address, what is my polling location? It's really not clear. Is that something that we can get added easily to the website, even if it's just a, click here to find your polling location link?
So that is great because there is a find my polling location link. I don't know if it is on the Secretary of State site. I would have to research to see because I did have people call me and say they found it online, they knew where to go, and it was actually accurate. That's a great idea, and it should be on our city site. So I will definitely mention that tomorrow and see if that's something that can be brought over, because I don't recall where it is, but there is something like Find My Alder, but there is something, and I want to say it's on the state site, but I will check on that. That's a good move, Steve. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Malone. That would be wonderful because I think it's actually the same portal for voter registration and the polling location. But if you're a novice person like this and you don't know which ward you're in, and you don't know that link will also tell you about the polling location, it's really unclear. And I think that is the question I get most is where do I vote? So it would be great to just have it, just like we have Are You Registered, to have, do you need to find your polling location, or click here to find your polling location?
And for people that, like, if you find, I'm sorry for interrupting, people that don't have access to internet, sometimes the older people, although they've often have been voting for a while, they would know. We are in the office on election day. We go in at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and we don't leave until every polling location is closed. So anyone, we do man the phones. We have a lot of people on the phones. We had one year with some phone issues, but that seems to be good. We, throughout the course of the day, have people call all day and say, could you tell me my polling location? And we could just look it up for them right away as well.
Well, I think it would be, great to lessen the workload on you all that day,
right,
and have it prominently on the website.
Agreed.
And I think for me, what Mr. Good referenced is a big part of it, in that in an odd year, we're all in one location. In an even year, we're in 4 different locations. So I do think, as we look at redistricting, we should try to minimize that as much as possible. So I don't know the full process myself, but whatever role the registrar can play in helping us do that, the registrar's office rather, that would be helpful. And can I also ask questions of the clerk's office, Madam Chair?
You
Or not yet?
can. May is on from the clerk's office, and she may not be able to answer them because I don't think her mic is working, but at least she can address them possibly via email, if that's okay. So go ahead and ask the question so it's noted.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Ms. Malone, for answering the registrar related questions. I think my main concern, Mr. Good also referenced, but the lag between results showing up on the state system, where one can check on the status of an absentee ballot application, and the city system. So I think my first question would be to clarify if the plan for this election is to continue to use 2 different systems, or is the plan to rely solely on the state system? And then if it's the latter, if it's just using the one system, would we expect those problems to be resolved? So that was my main concern. And then, I like Mr. Good also, I was going to be out of town on election day, so I needed to get my absentee ballot. I waited a couple weeks, it didn't show up, so I appreciate all the hard work the clerk's office did. They were able to prepare a ballot for me at 200 Orange Street so that I could vote beforehand. But it would be helpful to know what if anything else process-wise would be done to, as much as possible, speed up the time between sending and receiving the applications, acknowledging that the Postal Service also plays a big role in this. And then the last quick thing would be on the locations of the boxes. It seems like the boxes got a ton of use, and I think everyone I talked to is really enthusiastic about it. It's great that the legislature has approved the boxes for continued use in the future. And I think that we can maximize their impact by having them in multiple locations so that it's easier for folks who aren't able, or it's difficult to get downtown, to also make use of those boxes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alder Winter. May, if you're able to answer those questions, you can try unmuting and we'll see if we can hear you. You're still on mute.
May, you may need to hit *6.
May, I don't know if you heard Misty, but if you're on the phone, you need to select *6 to unmute yourself. Okay, still nothing. Alder Singh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no question at this time, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Smith.
No questions at this time.
May. Well, first of all, May, thank you for at least coming. We appreciate it. And you're always a wealth of information at these meetings. And I'm sorry that we are unable to communicate properly. Technology sometimes fails us. And unfortunately tonight, that is exactly what it's doing. We do have some answers to questions that were submitted. I'm thinking that we will invite the two departments once again in maybe for our August meeting. I did speak with the registrar's office today. They are unable to commit. So May, I'll give you a save the date for August 16th is when our next City Service and Environmental Policy meeting will take place. So it will not be on the first Thursday of August, but it will be on August 16th, which is a Monday at 6 p.m. If you or our city clerk, Mike Smart, is able to make it, we would greatly appreciate it. And Lisa, if you could reiterate the message to the city clerks, the registrar's office, that would be really appreciated. Again, I did speak to one of the registrars and I was told they were unable to commit at this time for August 16th. Is there anyone else from this panel that would like to speak? Please raise your hand, including any questions from the alders. May, I think you're dialing in. And if that's the case,
hello?
Hi.
Hello, am I there now?
You are, we can hear you. Thanks for being here, May. Sorry about all the.
Good Lord. Oh my God.
I know.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Persistence.
Well,
persistence.
You made it and we appreciate it. And if you could maybe state your name and address for the record and give us whatever information you have, that would be appreciated. And I don't know if you heard Alder Winter's questions, if you could address those as well. And I'm sure he will be happy to ask them again if you weren't able to hear him.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is May Gardner Reed. I live in New Haven. I am the assistant city clerk. Address, you said 13 Main Street in New Haven. Thank you. I've been in the city clerk's office for a long time, about 30 years now. So, through the years, I have a prepared statement and I'm going to read it for time's sake. Amen. Excuse me. I'm just all messed up. Forgive me, everybody, please. Through the years, absentee voting has become a greater part of casting a vote in the city. And the most popular groups that take advantage of absentee ballots are elderly people that live in complex units, elderly people or disabled people who have a status within the Connecticut voter registration system, We have some of the mentally disabled or mentally challenged group homes now, which are taking advantage of the absentee voting. We always have the convalescent homes that vote all the time with help from the registrars, and just a host of people who aren't able to get to the office is able to cast a vote through absentee balloting. Okay, so within the past 5 to 10 years, the increase of requests for an absentee application is grown noticeably, and most significantly noticeable in this last election. COVID-19 has thrown us in a whole different status for absentee voting, and now we're grappling with how to handle absentee voting going forward as other states. There's laws being passed, there's things being talked on the state level and the federal level regarding voting, not in-person voting, we'll say that. So our question now is, are we status quo or what are we doing? Currently, the General Assembly is considering proposed bill number 5. And that talks about, and the purpose of it is to allow electors to request an absentee ballot online and to increase access for voter registration and to increase voter participation and to increase access for safe and secure locations to vote. As this bill moves forward, from my understanding, it only allows access to voters to register and then you can request an absentee application to vote. It is actually not a way to get a ballot online. The ballot still has to go through postal mail or in person. And we're looking to improve that right now. And then if it does pass, it's still going to throw us in a whole another level of absentee voting in ways that we haven't seen before. You asked a lot of questions. The first question that was asked, can people use drop boxes outside of 200 Orange Street? And if you can, so far, for what? That's the question. And then the question also said, how often will they be checked? Response. Drop boxes are curbside at 200 Orange Street. In front of 200 Orange Street, we have 2 boxes. Maybe 25, 30 feet down Orange Street is 2 more drop boxes. If you go left up a breezeway that we have behind 200 Orange Street is 1 more drop box. So there's 5 drop boxes that the public can utilize. And what goes in the box? Generally absentee ballots. And we are allowing absentee applications to go in there as well. How often do we check it? Regularly, daily, regularly, throughout the whole day. When anytime a primary or an election is going on, they are checked. And they're there because they're in secure locations. They're in a central location for voting. Okay? So that's why the drop boxes are there. And they are being used. You asked another question. Will people be able to vote absentee with no excuse, like in the November election? Currently, we are operating off of the November no excuse application. We're still getting clarity as to how, I mean, we have a couple of applications from the state. It says COVID, some say no COVID. We're getting direction from our Town Clerks Association as to which one we're going to use, since it's going to be a no excuse process or selection if you want to vote absentee. The state may send out new applications. We don't know yet, but we're waiting to hear. Okay. Another question you asked was, how do we plan to let residents know the process? Is it the process of absentee voting, or what process are you asking about? Absentee voting has always been one way that residents know of voting. Generally, we don't do we don't go out, registrars do, and do a campaign saying register to vote absentee. We don't really promote that. You have to, generally there's an excuse or a reason why people can't get to their polling place on election day. And within the span of time, when the absentee ballots are ready, people can start, the public can start requesting an absentee ballot. Generally, when election time gears up, the alders know that absentee ballots are available. Before the alders even get to campaigning, the town chairs know that there's absentee voting. And then the registrar of voters also knows. They go out and they know there's absentee voting. Our website does or has been updated, and we have that information on our webpage. So we don't do any mass mailings or, you know, going out to the general public or anything like that. So that's one way of people knowing, or a couple of ways of people knowing. And it's, your other question is, it said the website seems outdated, and I hear you, Mr. Good, on there, but we've gone through the website, and the information that we have, dog license and applications, have been updated. I'm not sure what link in the question that you were asking me about, that's not the link. It's just the City of New Haven Town Clerk's office, where you can get an application for an absentee ballot, or the Secretary of State, or they have Get Out to Vote. They have applications as well. So I'm not sure what that link was all about, but the information is on the City Town Clerk's webpage. You asked, when will applications be available? We have the primary currently coming up, and for September 14th, the absentee ballots will be ready on August the 24th. Absentee ballots are generally, it's all about the mail. And because of COVID, until that whole COVID thing is lifted, or we're doing something else, they're generally still handled by the mail. As far as in person, we're trying to set up a system whereas similar to what we did in November. As soon as the ballots become available, we're going to try to work out a way where we can put a table downstairs or outside, or however we can do it. We're working on that. But again, information comes from the state for certain things we can do and certain things we can't do. Definitely, we cannot distribute ballots in the library, at the motor vehicle department, and wherever else. So ballots have to be controlled, okay? You ask what changes are we undertaking to make it easier for people to track the absentee ballots on the CVR system. We are currently working with the City of New Haven's IT department and the State of Connecticut IT department to pair our label makers and scanners to their system, whereas when somebody asks for an absentee ballot, we will go into the CVR system, make their label, and then you could track it that way. That label creates the tracking system for your absentee ballot when it goes out and when it's returned. But at present time, that has not been paired yet. Our IT department and the state is working on it currently. So that's pretty much, and I'm sorry I rambled on so much. I was more prepared when I was relaxed trying to get on, but I apologize that I went through all this kind of rambling. If you have any more questions for me, please ask.
Thanks, May. You did great under pressure. I did see Alder Winter's hand up. So go ahead, Alder Winter.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, May, for trying another method of getting on and breaking through the technical difficulties. We've all been there with Zoom. On the CVR question, to clarify, this last election, there were like two databases or two systems for tracking absentee ballots. Is the plan for the next primary and general election to just use the state system? Is that the CVR system?
Yes. Going forward, we are pairing our equipment with the state's equipment so that they produce, like I said, a tracking label. As soon as the requests come in, we do the process to make the ballot go out, which is to put the information in the CVR system. It creates a label for us to put on your absentee ballot. That starts the tracking. And then after it's returned in the CVR system. We're not going to use two systems like we did during the general election, because we see we saw the loss with the time lapse. It would come in here first in our system that we were using, which was much easier for us to track, the town clerk's office. But for the public to track it on the state system, it was overwhelming. So had a person or a voter called to the office to see if their ballot had arrived or went out, we had the information internally. The state did not have it. Then we got overwhelmed with trying to input that information in the CVR system. It was just too much.
I appreciate you clarifying that.
So moving forward, we're gonna start with the CVR system, and then we're gonna end with the CVR system.
Thanks, May. I do appreciate you clarifying that. I think that hopefully that, like you said, reduces the lag and makes it easier for folks to find out where their ballot is in the process. It sounded like with the drop boxes that the plan for now is to continue with the downtown locations due to concerns about the security of the drop boxes.
Yes. Vandalism is a big concern. And then collection is an even greater concern. Times is a greater concern. Security is everything.
Would a location like a substation where it's like video monitored and it has kind of a security, it feels secure. Would something like that address those concerns? And that way, we have these substations. It would be a retrieval concern, but would something like that maybe help with the security concern?
Not really. You still have, well, it could. I'm not going to say it couldn't, but it could. But we'd have to get drop boxes for every substation around. And I'm not sure how substations are monitored.
I see. Yes, I think from my perspective, and it would be easier for voters, even if we were to do a handful of substations, like one in the north part of the city and the east and the west, to distribute it that way, even if we couldn't do every substation. But I understand what you're saying, that, what about the substations that don't get them? So
correct.
Yeah. I feel like I had another question, but it's late and it's slipping my mind. So I just, again, I want to just thank you and Lisa and everyone at the clerk and registrar's office. Even though there were difficulties, everybody really appreciates all of the heroic efforts that folks put out to do everything they could to try to make things smooth for the voters. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Again, thank you. But again, November 2020 election was an eye opener for us regarding absentee voting. Just expect the unexpected always. This municipal election is not as, well, I'm not going to say it's not as important, but I'm confident that it will not be as overwhelming as the general election. But we are preparing for all things that will come, that will, throw us off the normal for the duration, or as long as elections are coming now. COVID just made it so difficult, and we weren't expecting that, and we were kind of expecting large absentee voting in the November, but it really overtook us. I could just say that's honest.
Yes, indeed, May. Thank you, Alder Winter. Any other questions? Alder Roth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just real quickly, first of all, thank you, May, very much for your persistence, as you said. It very appreciated to stay on, and you were completely clear in what you read. I guess I just want to reiterate what Aaron Good said about it. It sounds like there's still a chance that everyone will be able to vote absentee, in which case, if I'm understanding that correctly, and if that does happen, there could be a huge number of absentee ballots. And I do know, because I've already heard from people, that people from the League of Women Voters would be very happy to volunteer again. And so kind of, as Aaron said, just kind of getting the word out sooner rather than later so that people can sign up would be great. Yeah, people are happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you. I will pass that along to the clerk. I've taken it in. We're trying to jump on numbers early, because even we're not fully closed, but we're still kind of hindered with COVID. With COVID in our way a little bit. The main part is that people can't come in the office right now. We're not fully open to the public, and that's a part that we're trying to work on we're just trying to work on that part. Because we do better with in-person, absentee ballot when you come in, versus, trying to set up a table, trying to, a whole lot of stuff, happens. Keep ballots in order, even the volunteers need to know that it's just not handing out a ballot. There's so many steps you have to take in order to get that ballot right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Roth, and thank you, May. You're right. It's important to get it right from the beginning, and as many steps as it takes. Well, that's part of securing that vote as well, and making sure that it is valid and counted with all the steps being correctly filed. So appreciate your hard work. I know we've had many conversations, and I know how hard you work in that office, and it's greatly appreciated. Are there other questions from the committee members for the registrar or the city clerk's office? Please raise your hand so I can see it. Okay, I don't see any. I'm going to open it up to the public, since this is it's a workshop and public hearing. So at this time, I will ask if anyone from the public would like to speak on this item. And if you do, please raise your hand. And I will ask for a second time. Does anyone from the public like to speak on this item with the registrar's office and the city clerk's office regarding elections? And for the third time, anyone from the public would like to testify, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none. Misty, just be my second set of eyes at this time. I don't see any hands up. Okay, thanks. Do I hear a motion to close the public hearing portion?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and we will take a vote in closing. Alder Roth?
Yes.
Alder Winter?
Yes.
Alder Singh?
Yes.
Alder Smith? And I am a yes. The public portion is officially closed for this item. We do need to take a vote on this. Do I hear a motion to move the item?
Make a motion to move the item, Madam Chair.
Second.
Okay, the item has been moved and seconded. Discussion. Alder Winter, you look like you have something on your mind. Go ahead.
To clarify the motion, as a friendly amendment, we'll be moving to read and file the item.
Yes, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. I'm actually sitting up here sweating and my brain cells are fading. So yes, we will vote to read and file this item.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Alder Roth.
You had mentioned possibly leaving it open in case there were questions on August 16th. So does one still read and file or take some other action?
It's a good point. I think I would like the commitment of both departments. And if we make it a workshop, we can call it at any time we want without a communication. Well, I'll leave it to you guys. What would you like to see done? Alder Roth?
If I may.
Yes.
If I may. I would like to see, if you're going to hold a workshop around the elections, just a workshop alone, so we can get right to the point.
I know.
And not wait so long. A workshop is better when you're just working on that instead of having, and I got lost, so I'm sorry, and I do apologize.
No need to apologize.
getting on. But yes, if I may, I would like to see it just a workshop with no other items on the agenda.
Noted. Unfortunately, there are challenges with that to find a meeting evening that has no other meetings. But duly noted, we have time to plan it. But right now, I will ask, the clerk's office as well as the registrar's office to save the date of August 16th to possibly get an update from both departments. And I will look at the agenda. It's still a little ways off, so I'm not sure what will be on the agenda. And if for some reason that agenda looks full, then I will try and find another night for just the workshop. So I appreciate that suggestion, May. I do see Alder Winter's hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would say we keep the item in committee, and if we can do the registrar and the clerk's office the favor of having them go first at our August meeting, then maybe that's a good way of doing it. If we have other business, we'll take care of it after the workshop.
Okay, that can work. All right. What do y'all think? Alder Singh, what do you think of that plan?
I will welcome that plan. I think that's a good gesture to have a city clerk's office first on the agenda so we can go into that and get the question answered. So I'm in favor of that, Madam Chair.
Okay, Misty, what is the right procedure then? We're not going to vote this out of committee. We're not going to read and file it. We want to keep it open, but I want to make sure we're doing whatever we need to do do that.
Alder Singh could take his motion off the table, and then you could just take no action and just move to having a motion to close the meeting. To adjourn, sorry.
So we take back the first and seconds. Okay, so Alder Singh, if you could take back your motion to read and file, making the first motion.
I would take back the first motion to read and file and to put it back on the agenda as a first item. I withdrew that motion.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and it's been seconded to keep this item on the open. Any discussion? Alder Roth.
Madam Chair, I agree with this. I think we can just adjourn the meeting though to do that. So I move to adjourn.
Second.
Everyone in agreement of adjourning? Alder Roth?
Yes.
Alder Winter?
Yes.
Alder Singh?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. Have a good night. Stay cool.
Colleagues.
Again, thank you everyone for staying up and listening to these important items. So thanks everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank
Ciao.
you, Madam Chair. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, May.
Bye.